want to save time, money, resources? Do you want to achieve efficiency, accuracy, timeliness in the implementation of your programs, projects, and activities? Introducing the EBP Pro 2.0, also known as the Electronic Budget Planning Process. The EBP Pro is a productivity application system unique to the operation of CNSC for its timely, accurate, and goal-oriented budgeting. EBP Pro's key feature that makes it an innovation is value for government's financial resources. The EBP Pro was launched and first used during a CNSC pre-budget planning activity in 2018. 6 campuses with 9 delivery units of CNSC utilized the EBP Pro, seeing to it that programs, projects, and activities are aligned with the institution's preparation of the work plan, encoding of the PPAs, until generation and printing of reports. It answers the usual problem of beating the deadline. It gets the budget done, fast, precise, even ahead of time. Most importantly, EBP Pro complies with budget planning procedures, distribution, and manages limited financial resources. Who benefits from the EBP Pro? It's the entire institution. The CNSC community directly and indirectly benefit from it. What makes EBP Pro an innovation? Pro a source of new innovations. It ensures alignment of PPAs with the mandate of the college. Its adaptive capability. It is faster and more accurate. It schedules procurement of supplies with ready-made purchase requests. It tells the procurement office what and when to purchase. It automatically consolidates reports. It can be accessed online and soon offline. How is it accepted by the users? The technology acceptance survey conducted to the users of EBP Pro showed this result.
As planning coordinator of Lapu campus, initially, I experienced a little difficulty in using the electronic budget planning process until I learned how to use it. It made our budget preparation easier and faster as compared to how we do it before. For us who are far from the main campus, remote encoding saves time, energy, and effort. It is also easy to retrieve and make modifications.
What makes EBP Pro unique? The average fund spent in budget planning process of around 556,800 becomes only around 67,200 with EBP Pro, which means huge savings of 87.95%. EBP Pro ensures that all programs, projects, and activities are consistent with prescribed objectives and anchored on CHED mandate and the Philippine Development Plan. As an example, the faculty and staff development PPAs were aligned with Accelerating Human Development Code of the Philippine Development Plan. EBP Pro auto-generates income projection by simply inputting the projected enrollment, no need for long Excel simulation. The EBP Pro is the first ever application designed for state universities and colleges and is continuously undergoing improvement to make it dynamic and usable to other SUCs. Can it be replicated? That's the goal. In fact, the college currently shares the use of the EBP Pro to the Central Bicol State University of Agriculture during their orientation on operational planning workshop. Recently, it was also presented during the region-wide Cinco Connect IPAMS orientation. And here's what they say. Can it be sustained? Yes. EBP Pro doesn't need huge IT infrastructure. Laptops and stable internet connection will do. For region-wide or nationwide operation, the system can only use a hosting subscription. System maintenance and continuous development can be sustained through income from subscription and eventually turn EBP Pro into a revenue-generating platform of CNSC. What did CNSC get in utilizing the EBP Pro? Grant of 2018 performance-based bonus. Certified under ISO 9001:2015 in 2018. Recertified under ISO 9001:2015 and multi-campus certified in 2019. Recently included in the list of 2020 GBPR Award finalists. On top of that, since its launching in 2018, EBP Pro has been the key in making CNSC the top recipient of capital outlay as shown in 2019 and 2020 General Appropriations Act. Effectiveness, efficiency, equity. That's the EBP Pro advantage. Excellence 2020 Road to University of Camarines Norte. State College through the Office of the Vice President for Research and Extension in partnership with the Ugnayang Pang-Aghang Tao Incorporated or the Anthropological Association of the Philippines welcomes you to the Doing Ethnography Seminar Workshop. Just a few gentle reminders before we start the seminar. Please be informed that we are being recorded and streaming live via Facebook and YouTube. Your microphone is muted during the virtual event, except when you are recognized to talk. You may also opt to turn off your video. You are encouraged to ask questions using the chat box publicly. It will be collated and raised during the question and answer part of the seminar. E-certificates will be given to those who have completed the sessions and accomplished the evaluation survey through Google Form. The link for the evaluation form will be shared tomorrow. We also would like to remind our participants to make sure you have registered using your correct email address for the sending of the e-certificates. Let us now start the day with an invocation and the singing of the national anthem and the CNSC hymn.
Our Heavenly Father, the fount of all goodness and grace, the cause of wisdom, the source of intelligence, we welcome you, O Lord, to this auspicious gathering of your beloved, who continuously give you thanks for every opportunity to learn something new and become fruitful to the works of your creation. We humbly come to you, not because we are worthy, but because we find ourselves in need of you, who is our strength and our hope, to continue despite the challenges we face in health, prosperity, and our solidarity with one another. We pray that today's gathering, made possible by the grace of advancements in technology and social media, becomes successful in its endeavors, so we can offer it back to you as our humble offering to honor you, glorify you, and love you through our deeper connection with everyone. May we find bliss in today's session and become more productive children and co-creators of the earth. This we ask and pray through Christ our Lord. Amen.
This meeting is being recorded.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Kayang magiliw, pero sa silanganan, alam ng puso, sa dikit mo'y buhay. Upang hinirang, kuya ka ng magiting, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisigil, sa nagagang tutok sa simoy at sa langit ng pagaw, ay hinatang tulad, awit sa paglayang
to our OIC president, the vice presidents, deans and directors, research coordinators, faculty researchers, and of course, the UGAT members who are joining us this morning, and they will be introduced later. Once again, good morning. Today's gathering of researchers is another effort of the Office of the Vice President for Research and Extension to capacitate faculty and staff's research engagement, this time in doing ethnography, and fortunately, in partnership with Ugnayang Pangagham-Tao Incorporated, or the Anthropological Association of the Philippines. This also provides an avenue for faculty researchers to identify unexpected issues which are useful in detecting relevant experiences that can be considered possible research topics. For the welcome remarks, may I now call on the Director of the Extension Services Division, Dr. Gerly Naval.
To our OIC President and SHED Regional Director, Director Predity Bernal, Vice Presidents, Deans and Directors, esteemed guests and members of the Anthropological Association of the Philippines, or UGAT, colleagues from CNSC, good morning. Today marks another special occasion for CNSC because to a non-anthropologist just like the majority of us here, I believe that today's activity is another edifying undertaking since we will have a more in-depth, broad understanding on how to do ethnography, how to become completely immersed in the culture, norms, values, and even in the everyday experiences of a particular group or the subject of the study. And it is deemed that this is not only a good shot for the CNSC research community, but also for the CNSC faculty extensionist, as ethnography could possibly be a good tool in the conduct of impact analysis and inline survey to better assess if our extension services indeed impacted lives in the community. So we urge everyone to please stay with us in all the sessions of doing ethnography. Thank you and good morning.
At this juncture, let us listen to the message of our amiable OIC President, SHED Regional Director, Dr. Ferry T. Bernal, CESO 3.
The Vice President for Research and Extension, Dr. Josefina Socorro F. Tondo, the Director of Extension Services Division, Gerly H. Naval, to all the participants in today's Doing Ethnography Seminar Workshop, especially to our collaborators from Ugnayang Pangagham-Tao Incorporated, or UGAT, the Anthropological Association of the Philippines. I would like to shout out to my good research, extension, and production. And to all of you, good morning. As an institution of higher learning, Camarines Norte College realizing its research mandate. The Office of the Vice President for Research and Extension intensifies such commitment by engaging on more comprehensive research studies with greater impact and significance to the community. Further, CNSC exerts effort to be at the forefront of research-based higher education institution in the region. To achieve this end, our Research and Development Unit, as responsive service provider in generating, disseminating, and applying scientific knowledge and technologies for sustainable development, spearheads this seminar. This seminar intends to maximize research capabilities of faculty and staff, and this collaboration with UGAT, a national reputable anthropological organization, in conducting a capability research training in doing ethnography is a truly commendable undertaking. This brings researchers from different disciplines, from all campuses and delivery units together to exchange and learn from one another, thus becoming a part of a larger intellectual community. This seminar, in partnership with UGAT, is committed to encourage logical and interdisciplinary research collaboration. Today, CNSC engages in doing ethnography. An orientation on ethnography was previously conducted before this seminar. This ethnographic method is a type of research that involves observing people in their natural environments with the purpose of creating a narrative description of that culture against a theoretical framework that encourages creative and in-depth ethnographic research in education, within or outside of the classroom setting. Furthermore, it is essentially observed that some faculty researchers find it difficult to choose the most relevant research method for a study. Some tend to believe that choosing the appropriate research method for a research topic is quite complicated, and some miss to consider the practical application of the research output. These research difficulties are expected to be resolved at the end of this seminar. Likewise, it is hoped that this gathering of researchers will help revitalize research culture and eventually will help produce quality and relevant research outputs published in reference journals here and abroad. From Camarines Norte State College, thank you, Ugnayang Pang-Aghamtao Incorporated, for partnering with us in this two-day seminar workshop in doing ethnography. And to all the participants, learn, relearn, and unlearn, and make the most of our seminar. And finally, continue to uphold quality and excellence in performing your research responsibilities. Sa Indugabos, Diyos mabalos.
Thank you very much to our OIC President, CHED Regional Director, Dr. Freddie T. Bernard. For the presentation of the modules, may I now call on the woman behind this Research and Extension activity, our Vice President for Research and Extension, Dr. Josefina Socorro Efton.
Please mute.
I'm sorry, ma'am, you're Ma'am Jo, muted ka po. Ma'am Jo.
Sorry, take two. This is going to be just brief to present to you what will happen in today and tomorrow's session, plus the second 2 days of the modules on 29th and 30th of July. So today we will be taking up as module 1, the overview of ethnography. We have very capable facilitators, resource person in the person of Ellie and Suyen Roldan. Okay, we are very informal. Anthropologists are usually very informal. We call each other by name. We don't pay attention to titles, but sometimes we are forced when we are in a university setting to call people doctors and experts. The second module will be facilitated by resource persons Ramon Felipe Sarmiento of Catanduanes State University and yours truly from the CNSC. Tomorrow, we will be taking up Indigenous Peoples of the Philippines. Our facilitators, resource persons would be Maria Mangahas and Jessie Vargas. Please take note that this is very, very important as this has been included in the curriculum of SUCs, and HEIs. Module 4 would be Village Community and Annual Cycle presented by Cynthia Sayas and R. Banyas. Module 5, we will be having visual methods in ethnography. Our facilitators, resource persons, turns international. Daniel Yo is coming from Monash University, and Romeo Turing, our youngest anthropology on board in the board of UGAP. Okay. Module 6 will be a key informant interview, participant observation, rapid ethnographic assessment. The facilitators and resource persons would be Zona Ampere and Marge Dino. Module 7, ethics in ethnography. This is also very, very important. Actually, all the inputs are very important, but this is a precautionary way of telling us that there are limits to what we can do in field work and that we have to respect every person that we encounter during fieldwork. So our facilitator, resource person, would be Rosario del Rosario. The last module, module 8, material culture, data processing and analysis. The facilitators, resource persons would be Amelia Rohel Rara and Nota Magno. So that's all, folks. That's all we are looking forward to. And see you in all the sessions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, our Vice President for Research and Extension, Dr. Safina Socorro F. Tondo. At this point, allow me to introduce our resource speaker for Module 1, the overview of ethnography. Eulalio Giab III, or Ellie, teaches ethnography, development discourses, qualitative research, and media studies in the Department of Broadcast Communication at the University of the Philippines in Diliman. He obtained his PhD in anthropology from McGill University in Montreal, Canada. His research interests include political ecology, legal anthropology, development anthropology, and cultural studies. His geographic areas of ethnographic research are northern Palawan and Bohol, especially among fisher Tagbanwa and settler fisher communities. He has been documenting an unrecorded epic of the Tagbanwa Kalamianen since 1997. He is a member of the board of UGAT, or Ugnayang Pangaghamtao, or the Anthropological Association of the Philippines. He has served as editor-in-chief of refereed journals like Aghamtao or UGAT and Social Science Diliman, Philippine Journal of Society and Change. Our next speaker is Susana Aroldan. Susana Aroldan is a lecturer at the Department of Sociology and Anthropology, Ateneo de Manila University, and guest lecturer at the Ateneo School of Medicine and Public Health. Her interests are in anthropology of health, maritime anthropology, and qualitative research methods. She obtained her undergraduate and master of arts in anthropology from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. Friends, let us all welcome our resource persons for Module 1 on the overview of ethnography, Ellie Giab and Suyen Roldan.
Okay, magandang umaga sa lahat. Hinati namin into two parts, no? And no, there are two parts of this particular session. The first part is my share, which is basically about the philosophy of ethnography, and the second part would be on the principles of ethnography, which our friend Suyen would be discussing with us. No? So, and I now have the permission to share my slides. Meron na ba? Yeah, I think there is. No? But before that, I'll be using two languages in our presentation today, English and Filipino. I want this to be more conversational, and by conversational, that's what I mean by being conversational. I would have preferred as well to speak sana in Bicol. I have roots in Bicol, but wala akong alam about the language. I can't even speak or understand the language. I have roots in Sorsogon, no? Pero matagal na, no? Anyway, so Just a reminder that our discussion today is just an overview. No? We'll be having a series of discussions or lectures, workshops about ethnography on different aspects of ethnography. So we find it good to give you first an overview. And by overview, we only focus on one aspect, which is just the philosophy of ethnography. Kasi baka maguluhan, ang dami-dami kasing uri ng ethnography. And kumbaga, we hope that we begin with an understanding of at least two major types of ethnography based on philosophy, but not yet on the methods, although the philosophies do inform the methods, particular methods that we employ in ethnography. Now, I strongly suggest that you write down your questions while we're doing the lectures, because we have a lot of time for that. No? Suyan and I have decided to give more time to a sharing of our experiences. No? Kasi mas doon kami natuto kaysa doon sa mga nabasa lang namin. Okay? So let's begin. I'm now allowed to share. Let me check. This is screen 1. Okay. Nakikita ba?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Please let me know if I do have issues in terms of sound. No, this is perhaps one of our problems in this kind of a setup. No, but we have learned to accept that part of online life is a different kind of aesthetics, and I think this is also one of the things that we need to explore as humans, as anthropologists. No? Okay. Now, an overview of ethnography. This is going to be only about 30 minutes. I'll try my best to cover everything in 30 minutes. The assumption here also is that you must have read the essays, but if not, don't worry. Don't worry, you can do that later. But it would have been better had you read it earlier. Para masituate natin. Anyway, this is just a brief survey of philosophical and methodological shifts. Okay. Walang aking cursor. There you go. Okay. Huwag mo nang pansinin yan. No? Okay, I suggest magsulat na lang muna kayo ng questions kasi you'll be given a copy of this presentation later. No? You'll be given a copy of this actual presentation later. Okay. I want to focus on two aspects alone of the philosophy. There are many philosophies, but based on textbooks and based on discussions by scholars, they identify two major philosophical or epistemological traditions of ethnography. No? One is what they call, classical and modern ethnography or anthropology, and the second part is the postmodern or post-colonial ethnography. Usually, yung pag tinatawag na classical and modern, that's from period to the 1960s, and postmodern beginning in the late 1960s. But before we proceed into the details of this philosophical divide, now let me just give you some warning or quote here. No? Number one, this divide is, while it is true, it is at the same time artificial. We have to take note of that. No? It is constructed. It is constructed. That is what I mean by artificial. Gawa yan, no? Although it's there, but we need some nomenclature or classification, no? To find some differences. Kahit na may differences yan, magkakapareho pa rin ang objective ng ethnography. Okay? Gusto ko maging malinaw yon. Mahalaga ito kasi para malaman natin ano bang uri ng ethnography ang ginagawa ko. Ito ba ay nasa mold ng tinatawag ng mga scholars na classical o ito ba ay nasa mold ng tinatawag nating postmodern? Hindi naman minsan mahalagang malaman kung nasaan, pero minsan nakakapagbigay ng kumpiyansa sa ating mga sarili bilang researchers, no? Pag alam natin may kaunting hating ganito. Now, that divide is artificial. That divide is constructed. It is also highly contentious. Okay? Pinagtatalunan yan. No? Gusto ko lang masituate ninyo, papasok kayo sa ethnography, dapat alam din ninyo ano ang pinapasok nating mundo. Pinagtatalunan din itong divide na ito. Okay? So kahit may pinili ka dyan, dapat aware ka pa rin na pinagtatalunan ito. At pwedeng mali ang ating mga pinipili. Okay? Number 3, there is this divide, but then that divide is porous. Butas-butas. No? Kahit nasabihin natin classical yan, postmodern yan, modern, post-colonial yan. No? Kahit mahati yan, nagtatagusan pa rin yan. They inform each other. They supplement and complement each other. In short, while there is a divide, they inform each other. Magkasama pa rin yan. Okay? And this is what I want to emphasize. It's not a matter of when those kinds of ethnography were practiced, no, or carried out. Both are contemporary. No? Kahit na lumang method dyan like the classical or kahit na bagong method dyan, yan ay parehong ngayunin. Ngayon, parehong present. No? Lahat dyan ay ginagawa hanggang sa kasalukuyan. Okay? So those are the basic premises that I want you to understand first before we go into the thoughts of these scholars. No? So classical, postmodern. Okay? But again, constructed dyan, artificial. Pwede hindi paniwalaan. Okay? Pero magandang i-situate natin. Alam natin i-situate. Now, ito bibilisan po to, no? Kasi I really want to go first into the readings, in detail into the readings. Ito just to give you an overview. Anong ibig natin sabihin ng classical at postmodern? No? So sa pinang scale o lawak, no? Nakasanayan natin yung classical, ito yung grand, no? Puro full shot, no? Yung view niya puro full shot, malawak. Para ka nanonood ng isang malawak na pelikula. Okay? Kitang-kita mo lahat. At gustong makover lahat. Samantalang yung postmodern, of course, hindi lahat ng postmodern, ganito, pati sa postmodern, kino-cover lahat. I really want to make that clear. No? But generally, maraming postmodern ethnography, highly particular. No? Masyadong nakafocus minsan sa isang aspect lang ng isang malaking bagay. Not everything can be covered according to them. Okay? Unlike the first scholars, no? The early scholars, and even yung current scholars, we try to cover everything, and there's nothing wrong with that. And we try to cover, and some would cover only a particular aspect of that huge aspect. And there's nothing wrong with that as well. No? Yun ang point natin. Dapat importante lang sa inyo, kung gusto ko bang i-cover lahat, o baka naman ito lang ang kaya ko. So these are issues. At least makakampante ka, baka nandito lang ako. Okay? And nothing wrong with that. Okay? Duration, usually, kadalasan, yung mga classical ethnographies, ito yung mga multi-year project. No? Kaya natin gawin yan ngayon. So, meron din isang kakaibang magsasabi na, no, pwede naman maging limited. Okay? At hindi rin naman malaking issue yan. What do we mean by limited? Pag-usapan natin mamaya. Okay? Both would require a full description of what you want to cover. Either grand man yan, o maliit. That's still the aim. Full coverage, kumbaga. Pero, yung una kasi, may attempt talagang, they really want to provide a complete account of everything. Here, a complete account of everything, that's postmodern, but then, merong sense of incompleteness, no? Parang hindi tapos. Okay? At hindi sila, at kampante sila na seemingly hindi tapos. Dahil ganun naman daw ang buhay. Hindi mo mako-cover lahat. At huwag kang matakot kung seemingly hindi tapos. Okay? That's part of that idea. Okay? That's part of that idea. So kapag gumawa kayo ng ethnography at pakiramdam ninyo hindi tapos, baka tapos na yon at huwag kayong matakot na seemingly hindi tapos. Okay? So gusto ko lang ilinaw yon. No? Now, anumang pananaw yan in terms of methodology, empirical and scientific. In short, systematic at nakabatay pa rin sa kung ano ang nakolekta mo empirically. No? Okay. Mahalaga yun. Hindi ka pwedeng mandaya, hindi ka pwedeng mag-invento, hindi ka pwedeng gumawa ng kwento. Okay? Analytical frame, in quotes ito kasi pareho namang rational yan. Yung isa sasabihin yung rational, mas detached, and the postmodern interpretive or reflexive. Okay, mamaya pag-usapan natin in detail yan. No? Kasi bakit yung ibang ethnography walang I? Bakit yung ibang ethnography merong I? No? Bakit pumapasok yung sarili? No? Ethnography pa ba yan? Pumapasok ka na bilang scientist. Pag-usapan natin mamaya yan. Okay? And partiality. Okay. Kahit magkaiba ng pananaw yan, basic principles magkaiba ng basic principles na tinutuntungan, iisa pa rin ang objective, maging objective ka. Kung ano ang sinasabi ng datos, yun dapat ang ilalabas mo at yun din ang paniniwalaan mo. Okay. Of course, iba yung positioning, pero that's a different story. But the pointer is, both are objective in spite of some variations in the premises upon which they base their philosophies. Okay? Last item. No? Of course, the old school would describe the world kasi we have to admit anthropology or ethnography was a colonizing project. It was a colonial project. We have to admit that. No? Then darating ang punto, teka, bakit ba ginamit lang ang kinilala lang ang mundo sa pananaw ng mga nag-document sa atin. Darating ang panahon, teka, baka kailangan nating palitan yung pananaw na yan at tingnan naman natin ang ating mga sarili sa punto de vista natin. No? So that is what we mean here by to rewrite the world. Maraming lalabas na ganyan pagdating ng postmodern ethnography. Okay? Dahil maraming ideya ng lalabas like post-colonialism, feminism, no? Ganong klaseng mga and recently gender issues, no? Baka ang mga sinulat pala dati ay male-centered. Ngayon baka dapat linawin yon. We're not saying that the early descriptions of the world are wrong. Baka meron lang silang mga pananaw na hindi na-cover o mga paliwanag na hindi na-cover. At yun yung sinisikap gawin ng postmodern. Kaya pagdating ng perspective, ang tawag nga doon sa una yung othering. Saka na natin pag-usapan ng ibig sabihin ng othering in detail. Ang ibig lang sabihin nito, kakaiba. Kung inyong papansinin yung mga unang ethnography, ang laging tinututukan yung seemingly kakaiba. Okay? Sa pagdating ng postmodern, sasabihin nito, teka, hindi kami kakaiba. No? Kaming mga dinocument ninyo, hindi kami kakaiba. So we have to reclaim those identities. No? So, now ito usapin ng truth. Iisa lang naman talaga ang truth. There's a truth of the matter na tinatawag. Okay? Pero kung focus at focus, yung sinasabi ng scholars, again, sinasabi ito ng scholars, no? Yung classical ethnography, singular truth. Kung anong na-describe namin, yan na yon. Pero dumating ang punto na maging ang ibang ethnographers ay kinu-question nila yung kanilang na-dokumento. No? Tama ba ang aking nagawa? Tama ba ang aming isinulat? May mga bagay ba kaming na-miss? At tinatanggap nila na may mga bagay silang nakaligtaan o hindi na-cover. Na pwedeng yung katotohanan na yan ay hindi ko nasaklaw. Kaya tinatanggap ng postmodern ethnography yung posibilidad ng iba pang mga katotohanan. Okay. Sabihin niyo, relative na ba yan? No. Hindi ibig sabihin ng magiging relative ang katotohanan. Isa siguro ang katotohanan, yung isa mas kampanting sabihin na ito ang totoo. Yung isa ay tinanggalan yung kumpiyansang iyon. No? Baka isa lang yan sa maraming posibleng katotohanan. So, sa ganyan ko gustong simulan yung talakayan natin ng philosophy ng ethnography. Okay? At yan ang inyong papasukin. At iyan ang inyong papasukin. Okay, now mahaba yata ito pero I'll try to cover everything ng medyo mabilis kasi meron naman time for sharing. Meron akong mga pinabasa sa inyo at iisa-isahin natin ngayon sila. No? Ito yung kadalasang hati pero ito again ay artificial. No? Ang ifo-focus natin si Malinowski sa postmodern supposedly sila Gertz, Clifford, and Hastrup. No? Basic pagkakaiba lang to. Basic differences, again, they still belong to one general school of thought. No? Okay. 2 points, fieldwork and participant observation. Diyan lang tayo magpo-focus. Okay? Okay. Now, fieldwork first. According to the classical school of thought, no? Dito talaga din-develop yung konsepto ng fieldwork, participant observation. Marami yan. Hindi na natin isa-isahin pa. No? You go out to the field, and live in the place of the so-called subjects. In quotes yan, in quotes. No? Pag namuhay ka dyan, multiple years, either yung life cycle or seasonal. Papasukin natin yan later. No? The value of this is you want to generate a wide range of fine data no? From first-hand observation. No? Sa sariling obserbasyon, sa sariling karanasan mo, makukuha ang datos. Pero nagpupunta ka ron ng may data, ng may hypothesis pa rin. No? Hindi ka naman nagpupunta ng completely wala. Ito yung point ni Malinowski. No? Yung mga naunang anthropology siguro, from his point of view, walang dalang pananaw. Pero ang nililinaw ni Malinowski, meron pa rin kayong pananaw na pinagsisimulan. Hindi po pwedeng wala. Pumupunta ka ngayon doon either to test that hypothesis kung ano man yun, or to construct more theories about that phenomenon. And sabi rin niya, fieldwork is not a random style of doing work. No? May systematic pa rin yan. No? May mga susundan ka pa rin mga batas. Although it is not neat and tidy all the time. Okay. Ang ethnography ay hindi lang naman nag-o-observe. Gumagapit din siya ng iba't ibang uri ng data gathering techniques. Kahit yung classical, totoo yan. Hindi lang natin siguro alam. No? Nagsa-survey, gumagawa ng mapa, gumagawa ng genealogy, nag-i-interview, at marami pa. At ang pinakasikat lang talaga, yung pakikipamuhay, which is participant observation. Ito ang pinaka-popular na aspekto ng fieldwork. Marami rin ang uri ng observation kung tutusin. Participant observation, direct observation, and indirect observation. Okay? Pero ang in-emphasize ni Malinowski yung participant observation. That is, you participate in the field. Hindi ka lang mag-observe. You become almost like them. You participate in the activities. Okay. Ang sinasabi nga niya, you just don't live in the place, but you immerse completely or partially in the phenomenon that you are observing. Kung ito ay tungkol sa mga mangingisda, sikapin mong magbuhay mangingisda. Hindi yung pupunta ka lang doon para makikain. Okay? That's not participant observation. Pupunta ka lang doon para mag-interview, at kahit tumirak pa rin ng matagal, kung puro interview ang ginagawa mo, still that is not participant observation. You have to be, in quotes, like them. Kung nangingisda sila, mag-participate ka sa pangingisda. At baka doon mo maunawaan yung mga pinag-oobserbahan mo o ino-obserbahan mo hinggil sa pangingisda. Okay. Kahit ito ay, even if the self is highly involved, naglinaw pa rin si Malinowski na kailangan mong paghiwalayin yung datos na nakuha mo, yung pananaw ng mga nakasalamuha mo sa lugar, at ihiwalay mo yan sa iyong sariling mga pananaw. Okay. Okay. Napaka-stricto niyan, no? The results of your data, the views of the locals, okay, and your inferences as the researcher. Magkahiwalay pa rin yan. Huwag mong sabihin na ganito sila kung hindi naman yun sila. Okay? Baka yun lang ang pananaw mo. So para sa kanya, you have to make that distinction. Or else, the method is no longer systematic. The method is no longer scientific. So generally, that's it. No? I think this is the last item for Malinowski. Naglatag siya ng iba't ibang mga kondisyon. Okay? At makikita natin yan sa meetings. No? Ang mahalaga dito, doon lang ako nagpo-focus sa philosophy kasi meron naman tayong workshop or lecture for the methods. No? Ang mahalaga dito, maramdaman mo yung akala mong hindi mo kakayaning makita. The imponderability of actual life. Maramdaman mo yung inaakala mong hindi mo pwedeng makita o maunawaan. Experience the flesh and blood of everyday data. Pero once you have experienced that, hindi dapat manatiling raw data yan. Kailangan mong hanapin yung patterns, organization, at unity ng mga datos na iyan. Batay sa kanilang pananaw. Kaya yung last item, see through the lens of the local. Okay? Marami yan. You cover everything, but you transform those raw data into something that is concrete and preferably at dapat lang talaga through the lens of the local. So generally, yan yung ibig natin sabihin classical ethnography. Nothing wrong with that. At tama yan. At hanggang ngayon, ganyan din dapat naman ang ginagawa. Gusto kong i-emphasize siya. Kahit na may philosophical divide, ganyan pa rin, my position is ganyan pa rin ang dapat na ginagawa. Okay. Now, let's proceed now to the next stage. No? Yung malaking hati. Yung tatawagin nila na I really have to emphasize, tatawagin nila, but I subscribe to that divide as well, partly, but only partly. No? To the other side of the debate is the post-colonial or post-modern, okay, ethnography. Okay. Pagdating ni Clifford Geertz, no, meron siyang tatawaging thick description. Pero mamaya natin pag-usapan ng detalyado yan. No? Ang main point niya rito ngayon is from the whole to the parts. Yung kaya nga sinabi ko sa inyo kanina, no? Kung yung old ethnography, ayoko sabing old yung classical ethnography, ay mas malawak ang gustong saklawin. Pagdating dito sa mga panahong ito, para sa kanila, pwede ka na mag-focus sa iba pang mga bagay. Okay. At pag sinabing thick description, isa niyang ginamit na halimbawa yung wink, yung kindat. No? At yung kindat na iyan, sa old classical, ay baka dinidescribe mo lang. Para sa kanya, minsan ay hindi naman mahalagang i-describe mo lang. Ang mahalaga ay magbigay ka ng pinakamaraming posibleng paliwanag doon sa phenomenon na iyon. Okay? Posibleng paliwanag hinggil sa phenomenon na iyong naobserbahan. Kaya niya tatawagin itong thick description, hindi dahil makapal ang iyong description. Okay? Tatawagin niya itong thick description dahil kahit ito ay isang maliit na bagay lang na iyong pinagtuunan ng pansin, okay? Ang mahalaga ay makapal ang mga kahulugan na pwede nating tingnan para maunawaan yung phenomenon na ating inoobserbahan. Kaya nga, we imagine Kindat, no? The anthropology of the Kindat, no? Can provide you with multiple, varied, and accepting, we have to accept this, sometimes opposite views about that phenomenon in a particular setting. That for Gertz is what he means by thick description. Hindi pa kapalan ng disertasyon, hindi pa kapalan ng nakita. Pwede ka magkonti lang, pero sisikapin mong mag-provide ng multiple meanings na pwedeng dalhin doon sa pangyayaring iyon. In that sense, para sa kanya, ang ethnography ay interpretive. No? Ito ay ini-interpret ko na rin. Hindi lang to ini-interpret ng pinag-aralan mong kultura, which is the main argument of Malinowski from the lens of the local. Here, ipinapasok ka niya. Sabi niya, you interpret what you are writing actually is not them. You are writing your interpretation of them. Okay? Of course, gugulo ang mundo sa ganyang klaseng at mag-aaway ang maraming tao hingga sa ganyang klaseng pananaw. Pero gusto ko lang sabihin na isa yan sa mga pananaw. Ang sabi niya, we construct other people's construction of the observed. So, ang dami-daming kahulugan kahit ito ay isang kindat lang. At yon para sa kanya ang dapat nating tingnan. Yung konteksto ng pagkakaroon ng posibleng maraming kahulugan kahit ng isang maliit na bagay. Wow, sabihin sa akin kung overtime na ako, madaldala ako. Okay. Okay. Now, pero hindi na nga mahulugan no, na dapat ay false ang iyong pananaw o ang iyong interpretasyon. Hindi ito dahilan para gumawa ka ng maling pananaw. Ang tawag niya ron yung fictio, pero hindi ito yung fiction. No? Nang ibig sabihin ay pagbuo, hindi ibig sabihin ng pag-invento. Okay, yun ang sinasabi niya. Okay? Yun, nabanggit ko na rin from the large scale to the microscopic. Again, tulad pa rin nung una, guided by theory, nag-elaborate ka pa rin sa theory and reforms theory. At pag sinabi naman natin theory, hindi naman kinakailangan malaki ang teorya. No? A pananaw is a theory. An initial hypothesis is a theory for that purpose. Okay? And ito ang gusto kong lagi nating maunawaan. Na laging tinatanong hanggang ngayon, no? Yang bang nakita natin ay pwede natin sabihin totoo sa lahat. Yung di ba sinasabi, the limitation of the studies that is only applicable to this. That is not a limitation of ethnography. That is the strength of ethnography. You do not generalize across cases as in surveys. Okay? You do not generalize across cases. You generalize within that case. And it is within that case that you derive knowledge. At hindi mo dapat ikahiya na hindi ka nag-generalize across cases at hindi siya limitation. In fact, that is the strength of this kind of ethnography, even classical ethnography. No? You generalize within the case. Kumbaga, pag sinabing, what is love? Okay. Love is X, love is Y, love is Z, love is A, love is B, love is D. Sa survey, makukuha mo yon. Pero sa ethnography, baka importante lang sa'yo. Hindi ka interested sa B, C, D, F, Y, G, X, Y, and Z down the line. Mas gusto mo lang pag-usapan yung love A. Love equals A. At pinapalalim mo yung love equals A. No? Yun ang point mo. You generalize within a case. But you can say that love equals A equals love equals Z. Perhaps you need another ethnography to understand how love is expressed in the phenomenon of Z. Okay? That's what I want to emphasize here. No? So huwag kayong matakot pag binabansagan kayong, hindi mo naman pwedeng sabihin totoo sa lahat ng bagay. Dapat kayong matuwa. Hindi ako nag-generalize across cases. That's your strong point. We are generalizing within a case. Sabi nga ng isa kong estudyante, and I really appreciate this view by one of my students in the PhD. Sir, so yung ethnography ay hindi pagpapalawak. Ang ethnography ay pagpapalalim. Sabi ko, wow, that's a very good theorizing of ethnography. Hindi siya pagpapalawak, ito ay pagpapalalim. Okay? At huwag kayong matakot na pinalalim ninyo kahit hindi siya ganong applicable sa lahat. Okay? Kaya nga ethnography. Okay? And, dami pa pala. No? Okay, anyway, yung iba rito siguro pwede nating pasukin. At dahil nga sa ganong katangian ng ethnography, para sa kanila, contestable yan. Kasi walang exact. Kung hindi siya exact, contestable. Pero ang sabi pa rin ni Gertz, yung kanyang proseso, yung kanyang pagiging contestable ay hindi output. Ang kanyang pagiging contestable ay isang proseso para mapunta ka sa precision, makarating sa punto mo. The process of the contestable is how we get to the precision of getting to the point. Okay? Kung hindi ka ko-questionin at dapat open ka rin sa pag-question ng proseso mo, ang pag-question na yon ay hindi para ma-debunk ang katotohanan na pulot mo, kundi para palawakin perhaps sa ibang panahon o ma-cover pa yung ilang mga katotohanan na posibleng hindi mo na-cover. Yun yung sinasabi ko nga kanina. Incomplete but still true. Okay? Incomplete pero totoo pa rin. Okay? Hindi naman incomplete, not true. Hindi ganon. Incomplete but true. Okay? So basically, yan ang ibig sabihin ng thick description. Now, last two items, no? Partial truth. Ito, ganun din naman ang sinasabi ni Clifford, no? Committed and incomplete. Now, may pagkahawig na rin sila ni Gertz, no? Kanina we interpret culture, sa kanya we write cultures, no? Iba yung panahong inobserbahan sila at iba yung pagsulat natin as ethnographer. Okay? We make, but we do not invent. In short, parang yung ito, questionable ito para sa marami. Ang ethnography daw ay wala sa ethnography, wala sa field. Ang ethnography raw ay nasa text kung binabasa mo. Yun ang kanyang assertion. No? Ang ethnography ay totoong nakilala lang ethnography dahil binasa na. Okay, dahil binasa na. At may value yan. No? May value din naman yan. Sa kondisyon natin ngayon, halimbawa sa IPRA, no? Kailangan may dokumentasyon muna bago ka makapag-apply ng iyong ancestral domains. At yung dokumentasyon na yun ang ethnography. Without that documentation, baka hindi pwedeng basta-basta ma-recognize ang isang kultura. May pagbabatayang teksto, whatever that text is written, oral, or down the line. You need that. And that's the point of Clifford. Ethnography has been transformed from the field, mula sa field, papunta sa isang bagay na binuo. Okay? At ito yung text na binabasa natin. At ito rin ang sinasabi niya, kung kanina multiple truths, nagproproseso ka rin ng multiple future possibilities. Okay? Now, ito siguro ang gusto kong pasukin natin. Self-reflexivity. Ang ethnographer sa pananaw ni Clifford ay kailangang maging conscious ka na ikaw ay nakikilahok sa pagbuo ng katotohanan sa gitna ng marami pang pumapasok sa pagbuo ng katotohanan. Okay. Unlike yung una, talagang, wow, amin to. Kami nakakaalam nito. Of course, aaminin naman ng mga classical ethnographers later on in their writings that they were aware as well of many truth makers among them. Pero expressly, sinabi ni Clifford, may pagkilala ang ethnographer na isa ka lang sa mga pumipilit unawain ng katotohanan ng maraming bagay. At hindi ka dapat mahiyagan. At yun yung humility na nakikreate sa atin. Bakit na sinabi ito? Dahil ang daming determinants ng ethnography. Hindi ko na isa-isahin ito, no? Pero in-identify lang muna sa atin. Papasukin ito ng ibang workshop, ng ibang lecture siguro. Context, rhetoric, institutions, genre, politics, and history. Lahat ito nagko-contribute sa pagbuo ng kung ano ang katotohanan ng isang phenomenon. At we have to accept na nandyan yung mga institutional limits, nandyan yung rhetoric orientation mo, nandyan ang mga kasaysayan para makilala natin yung konteksto ng katotohanan na pinipilit nating unawain. Now, ito ang mahalaga. Ang tanong niya is, participant observation. Pero, ang tanong is, bakit yung participant observation, yung observed lang ang nakikita sa ethnography? Pero bakit yung participant observation ay nandun lang sa field pero nawala na sa teksto ng ethnography? Okay? Yung old school kasi, di ba, parang detached, no? At wala yung sarili. Ang sinusulat lang yung naobserbahan. But for Clifford, kaya nga partial truth, no? Kay Clifford, no, kailangan mong tinanggal ninyo ang ethnographer. Ang point niya is, where is the participant in the truth of the observed? Kaya papasok yung sarili sa description minsan ng maraming ethnography. At para sa kanya, isang bagay ito na mahalaga sa ethnography. Critical self-reflexivity, the use of the I. Yung I is not an informal writing convention tulad ng itinuro sa atin nung grade school tayo. I, informal lang yan, blah, blah, blah. No. The I is philosophical, the I is political. Kaya huwag kayong matakot na gumamit ng I kasi ipinapaloob ninyo ang inyong sarili sa ethnography na yan. In that sense, dahil merong I, ethnography is both biographical and autobiographical. Pero kailangan kong dagdagan, but the self here is not about self-absorption. Still, this is not about you. This is only partly about you, but still mainly about that encounter. Last item na tayo, malapit na, no? Sa ganitong paraan, ang ibig sabihin ni Clifford ay, kung yung kanina yung tinatawag kong full shot, ito lagi kong paliwanag sa klase ko sa Broadcom, no? Full shot, dito naman ang ethnography ay closed up. Kanina full shot, nasa burol ka at naka-tripod. Kaya seemingly ang linaw-linaw ng picture, nako-cover mo lahat parang sine, no? Tapos steady, walang out of focus. Pero sa ganitong klaseng ethnography, yung camera mo, walang tripod, yung camera mo ay nasa loob ng mga pangyayari at lahat ng tao ron o pangyayari doon ay gumagalaw. At pag ganun ang camera mo, wala kang focus. Okay? May mafo-focus ka, yun ang na-capture mo. And that is what your ethnography is. Kaya nga, at bukod doon, gumagalaw pa, yubuyog-yug pa yung lupa. No? So isipin mo yung camera mong manual, nasa ganung klaseng sitwasyon, umuuga ang mundo, umuuga ang camera, yung pag-capture mo, yung umuuga yung ethnography, umuuga yung mga tao, yung mga pangyayari, paano mo makaka-capture yan? Ganun kabilis ang mundo. At yung moment na na-capture mo, that is your ethnography. Kaya partial truth, isang maliit na bahagi ng napakalaking mga bahagi na patuloy na nagbabago. Okay? So, basically, that's the Cliffordian ethnography. Siguro yung details nito at sa aming karanasan ay ibabahagi namin mamaya. No? Last item na lang talaga, no? Kaya papasok si Hastrup. Paano ba sinusulat, no? Ang ethnography? Isang bagay ang gustong i-point out dito, yung number 2. Ang ethnography is not out there para sa kanya. It is an encounter between the observer and the observed. Ang ethnography ay hindi yung nagpunta ka sa lugar. Para sa kanya, ang ethnography ay kung saan nagtagpo yung researcher at yung nire-research doon sa lugar na yon. Okay? O kung saan mang lugar. At yung pagtatagpong iyon ay ang mundong kinasasangkutan ng ethnographer, ng pinag-aaralan. Ibig sabihin, ibang sarili siguro ang inihaharap sa atin at ibang sarili ang binubuo mo. Pero sa engkwentrong iyon ay mayroong mga katotohanan lumalabas sa ganong klaseng ethnography. At yun para sa kanya ay napakahalaga. Hindi niya sinasabing mali yung una. Ang sinasabi lang niya, that is for her what encounter is, what ethnographic encounter is. Anong ibig sabihin nito? Yung ethnographer natututo sa kanyang pinag-aaralan, classical, pero yung ethnographer natututo rin sa kanyang sarili. Okay? At pwede na niyang baguhin ang kanyang sarili depende sa engkwentrong iyan. Hindi lang yon, ito ang gusto niyang i-emphasize. Sa pagpunta mo ron, yung inoobserbahan mo, yung pinag-aaralan mo, ay natututo sa'yo, pero because of your encounter, napag-aaralan din nila ang kanilang mga sarili. Na mapag-aaralan lang nila kung wala ka, kung hindi ka dumating. At teka, oo nga, no, bakit hindi ko pwede isipin ang aming mga sarili na gano'n? So, each learns about the self and the other. Each learns from each self, and each learns from each other. That for this kind of ethnography is what ethnography is. Compared sa una, this is all about them, classical. Now, in this kind of ethnography, sasabihin nila, this is not only about them, but this is also my interpretation of them. And kung meron silang ethnography, their interpretation of themselves. Sa ganitong klaseng ethnography naman, this is the world that we have created in that encounter. This is for us what ethnography is. Sa ganyan ko tatapusin, no? Pero bilang pagtatapos, no? Both classical, modern ethnography and postmodern, post-colonial ethnography are valid. And they can be used simultaneously. Ako, pareho kong ginagamit yan. Ang magiging tanong lang, kung pareho palang tama, bakit sila nag-aaway? No? Kasi nga may ilang mga premises ng pagkaunawa. No? Ang magiging tanong is, which you prefer and which you want to have more weight and value depend on the problem you wish to investigate. In short, ang gusto ko lang sabihin, papasok tayo sa ethnography. Hindi ko sinasabing kailangan ninyong malaman ng lahat ng debate sa ethnography. Pero mahalagang caution ay pagkilala anong brand of ethnography ang posible ko palang pinapasok. Baka pumapasok ko sa isang giyera na hindi nyo alam na may giyera na palang nagaganap. No? O pumapasok sa isang mundo na hindi nyo alam ano ang mundo ng ethnography. Again, this is a cautionary measure lang naman. Para mabawasan din yung para magkaroon ng kumpiyansa. No? Bakit sir, ganito ang sinusulat nila? Bakit to ganito? Kasi nanggagaling sila sa ganitong klaseng mga debate, if we want to call it a debate. No? But for now, siguro yun muna, and then how we resolve issues like this in our experiences. And I think that's it. Sorry kung nag-overtime na ako. Yeah, that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sir Ellie Giab III. So, really, we have to learn a lot. Marami pa tayong kailangang malaman about the ethnography.
Overview pa lang naman.
Overview pa lang po yun. So, we'll have more.
Wala pa sa methods. Sa iba yan.
Yes po. So, at this point, we'll be hearing na po si Ma'am Suyen Roldan for the principles of ethnography.
Ma'am, press Suyen, muted ka. You're muted, yes.
Yes, we are. Ganyan ang mga hindi sanay sa technology. Can you hear me properly?
Yes, ma'am. Very clear po.
I'm not muffled. Okay, good. Saan ako magsisimula? Time. Okay, anyway, good morning. Maray na gabos sa Indo. Maray na aga sa Indo gabos. Balik-baliktad ang aking beacon. A special shout out, of course, to Dr. Jotondo, Dr. Sarmiento, Ellie, Jessie, I don't know who else, my colleagues here. Who of my colleagues are here? You are very lucky to have seasoned colleagues, and I also take pride to be among them. This is an overview, a continuation of overview ito on my reflections na pinahirapan ni Mr. Ellie Giab. Pero sandali ha, pinaisip niya ako, what is my brand of ethnography? Talagang napuyak tuloy ako sa kaiisip ko, ano nga ba yung ginagawa ko? Sandali. Wait. Oh, I have to share. Wait. Pwede na ba mag-share? Share screen.
Yes, you can share, press Suyen.
Yeah, okay. So, like I said, this is the overview. And
Just put on a slideshow, press Suyen. Sa baba. Slideshow.
I think I pressed it. And I see that you cannot see.
No, kasi hindi naka-slideshow.
See, inano ko, na-press ko na, sandali. Now share. Stop share muna. So share again.
You have shared it.
Share screen. Share.
You have shared it, and then after you have shared, you have to click on the slideshow.
Yeah, slideshow sa baba.
Sa baba.
Oh, okay, I see. Yan. Sandali ha. No, pagka ganito, you cannot see it properly.
Okay. Pwede naman.
Pwede naman. Pero nakikita kasi yung mga susunod na slides. Saka
It's okay. It's small. So, ano yan, that's for my guide. Liitan ko na lang. Ganyan. At saka lakihan ko to.
Okay,
Does it work?
it works.
Okay. Just to make sure you see everything. All right. So this is, like I said, an overview as well as a reflection on the principles of ethnography. Um, Before that, si Ellie reminds us to put the IPR, fair use and attribution. So it's here. And I have included Miss Nota Magno, no, who, when we were first invited to do the same capacity building with NCIP, naawa siya sa akin kasi ang haba ng oras na binigay sa akin, nakakatuyo ng boses, di ba? So we've had collaborations such as that. We also were invited to ASMPH dahil sa medical school, mostly people have the positivist scientific point of view, di ba? So they're mostly statistical oriented, yung mga ganon, no? So when it came to qualitative research, there were only very few who could do it. And so they gave it all to me. Yung isang doktor na dapat gagawa ng lecture, nasa US noon. So is 8 hours. Paano naman ka magsasalita ng 8 hours? So I include her as an author, as a co-author in this presentation, even if she is not around. No? Speaking of research ethics, right? I mean, research ethics is incorporated in everything that we do. No? So I begin with even if she's not around. Okay, parang hindi yata kita lahat. Yun. So like I said, pinahirapan ako. No? And one could say that aside from being, that was a very profound question kasi for me, that Eddie posed and demanded, when I looked at his slides, he said, define the brand of ethnography that we use. No? You actually, through this activity, forced me to reflect on the principles of ethnography, which are very basic tenets from an anthropological education and practice inside and outside the academe. No? I accede that both brands of ethnography, actually what Ellie presented, range yun bali continuum diba? It's not one or the other. It's a tama na continuum siya, no? From the classical and the modern all the way to the postmodern, post-colonial. I don't know if you could call this moment another moment, diba? Moment pa rin. I mean, what are the next digital moments? I don't know, no? And I accede that this is an arbitrary and contentious divide. In retrospect, no, we do immerse and detach descriptive and interpretive, academic and applied, interdisciplinary, in collaboration with various specializations, actors, different levels of society. And meron pang yung transdisciplinary, di ba? Yung dissolving boundaries, no? And different approaches in practice. So parang yung dissolving boundaries, I'm finding in my collaboration with doctors, with non-anthropologists, that, yung social science is out there and we employ the different rigorous research methods. But these are ways of knowing, which are very important. So, sinabi na ni Ellie that ethnography, no, especially participant observation, popularized by Malinowski, no, is rooted in anthropology, and yung sinabi niya na it comes with the framework, a philosophy it is a methodological, right, an approach that includes the theories, the assumptions, no? Using qualitative, quantitative techniques, no? Pati census taking, kasama na yan, and we will learn about that later on. And a way of generating knowledge, no? How knowledge is, the knowledge we have comes from these basic principles, na holistic, relativistic, inductive, and interpretive. Napaliwanag ni Doc Ellie yan. So how did Agrosino define it? He said, ethnography is a process in which a researcher inserts himself into the everyday lives of those whose beliefs and behaviors are to be studied. So yung iba, yun nga, yung observing through the senses, it makes it also scientific. So hindi kami nag-iimbento ng datos, no? We don't invent, but we try to sift what is significant and insignificant information. So alam na natin, it's long-time field work. These are some of the tenets, very basic, holistic, integrated, unobtrusive in the natural setting. You know, kaya tayo pumupunta kung saan ng mga tao. There's a long-time framework, sabi ni Ellie, classical ethnography, at least parang sa akin, no, classical na ako. I mean, the younger people say classical, but this is our training, di ba? During our time, Dr. John. Oh, classical na pala, historical na pala yung kaalaman natin, di ba? Parang, oh, when did that become, when was that classical, no? Ang sinasabi, at least 1 year, no? But anyway, dapat flexible ang guidelines, no? So, guidelines lang itong mga tenets na ito. That's the whole thing, eh. That yung iba, they cannot get the point na, di ba, it has to be structured, pati yung question saka planado lahat. Pero tayo, we ask the questions as they happen. So again, as a strength of ethnography. So in my case, I go back to ethnography in recognizing the different brands that Ellie talked about. I look at the classical, the old-fashioned. Yet these are time-tested. Kahit ano pang ethnography ginagawa mo, hindi nawawala yung perspectives or yung pagtingin, no, sa basic principles that are listed here. Holistic, inductive process. No? An inductive process means na the theory emerges out of the data. Diba? We don't try to fit the theory into, we don't make our data fit into the theory. No? That is bad science. No? Pag pinilit mo na kailangan maglapat dun sa teorya, hindi. Ang teorya, ilalapat mo sa nangyayari at nagaganap doon sa actual life, diba? Sa nakikita mo talaga doon sa komunidad. So yan, comparative, yung ginawa ni Ellie na comparing philosophies. That example yan, we're always comparing. Then we compare at our own philosophies also, no? Based on narratives. Some people ask me, paano yung coding? Hindi ako nagpo-coding. Parang I organize the data, I elicit themes, siguro yun na nga yung coding, no? Sometimes it's jargon. No? So in dissolving the divides, we also let go of some of the jargon. Or we try to understand, ito pala yung sinasabi nito. No? So number one, holism. No? What does holism mean? No? That the systems, it has a systems orientation. Yung sabi ni Ellie, pag long shot, kitang-kita mo lahat, yung connections, no? And you assume that the different parts of that long shot are connected, no? Are interconnected. Aspects would have relationships, no? Doon sa nagaganap ng social life in other parts of that long shot. Another way of looking at holism is that Kasi sa ANFRO, nagsimula siya with 4 fields. No? Although now we know it's more than just 4 fields. There, ang dami, ang lawak na ng subfields, no? Ang dami ng sections, even with other social science and other sciences. So, for example, parang ang pagtingin dun sa holistic is we understand human beings both as a biological and social being. No? Hindi hiwalay yun sa atin. That there are basic commonalities between us because of our biology, and yet lahat tayo kakain, lahat tayo matutulog, no? But how you sleep, how you eat are differentiated by what you are accustomed to or how you would do it. No? Hindi lahat ng pagkain para sa akin. Pero pagkain ng Bicol ang sarap. Doon ako, I mean, that I have a very good image of Bicol because that is what made me decide to pursue anthropology. My experience in Bicol, no? And my experiences with people from the region was very pleasant for me. Anyway, back to this, no? Yung ito na yung describing all aspects of social life, no? Economic, political, religious, social, cultural, lahat yan magkakaugnay. This I like this the most, no? Presenting different advantages. Ito na yung strength ng ethnography talaga, no? That you present, they ask, paano yun? How do you know that you understand fully? No? If the idea is that things are interconnected, when you focus on and zero in on particular topics, hindi nawawala, kahit focus yan, hindi nawawala yung orientation of the interconnectedness. And the point is to present the different advantages or perspectives around the topic. No? So yung tinatawag natin na nuances. And I put here, including unpopular, the excluded, the outlier, kasi di ba sa science, yung outlier ay hindi yan majority, di ba? So making, those marginal perspectives, making the seen unseen, no? Especially voices that are not heard. So in looking at the system, kaya nga sabi all levels, hindi lang yung kakausapin mo yung nasa taas, di ba? Nakala mo eksperto, alam niya lahat. Pupunta ka talaga sa iba't ibang levels, pati yung kasama, hindi kasama, no? Kinukuha mo yung kanyang perspektibo. So, and then of course, it's a combination of all the strategies, the approaches, the data sources. So it is easily multi approaches, hindi lang narratives, hindi lang qualitative, hindi lang quantity. But I put this here. Anyway, Ellie included this in the list of reading materials, my own work, which makes the unseen seen. So halimbawa sa pinaghirapan na connections na ito, you don't see those connections immediately. No? Parang puzzle, you piece them together. And itong municipal committee, kasi isang kontrata lang siya between a concessionaire and the municipal office. So ito lang makikita mo in the records. Yung pala, there is a whole world out there, no? A whole network of 150 people at one instance, no? Interacting in that concession, kaya nga system, di ba? So yan ang systems orientation. Na nabuo yan because of long-term field work. No? So, ito pa. Sandali. The idea here is to avoid ethnocentrism. Ano ba yung ethnocentrism? Diba? Yung idea kasi na ikaw mas magaling ka sa kanila kasi eksperto ka, edukado ka, gano'n. Lalo na sa pakikitungo sa IPs. Because if I remember right, the reason you want to also do this is to be able to document yung indigenous peoples, right? So ito yung hindi ka mas magaling sa kahit sino, di ba? Kailangan intindihin mo ang mga tao dahil may sarili silang paliwanag and logic of doing things which might be very different from your logics. No? So halimbawa, pag gumamit ka ng derogatory terms and labels, hindi yan ignorant, hindi siya edukado, primitive, uncivilized, superstitious yan, paniwala yan. Tayo, may pagiging tayo na hindi naman palagi nagkakaroon ang ginagawa natin. Taga-bundok sila. Ito nakita ko to sa film na pinadala ni Dr. Tondo, di ba, yung kabihog, ayaw nila maging kabihog, which had a derogatory connotation. So yun, mga examples yan. Pag ganyan ka mag-isip, you have to catch yourself, no, na hindi ganyan dapat. Tapos yung isang aspeto is yung relativism. Yan, yung philosophy na there's no superior culture, all are respectable when understood from their own standards and particular historical experiences, di ba? Kasi nga may sarili silang paliwanag. What is right and wrong depends on their own moral codes. No? So we suspend judgment, but it is a balance between both. Kasi we cannot shed our perspectives. Hindi natin ma-shed yan. Baon din natin yan. So suspending judgment is not letting go of your own. So yan, you wrestle with that. For example, no? Yung sense of morality ng blast fishing. Sabi, parang from an environmental point of view, when we were doing coastal resources management, mali yung blast fishing. But from the point of view of the blast fishers, nakita ng isang colleague namin dun sa research, si Roberto Galvez, sabi niya, ang daming social incentives to do it. Why? You throw the blast and you occupy a high position within the community. Kasi pag uwi mo, dami mong baon na isda na isi-share mo sa kapitbahay. So meron kang, di ba, may value yon doon sa lugar. Tapos, so parang yung pagiging suspending judgment means that you set aside those your own without shedding it. Yung isa pa, marami pang ibang examples of the difficulty in balancing what your own and theirs. So anyway, I think nabanggit na rin to ni Ellie. Kaya nga sabi ko, being reflexive or including that I position that Ellie talked about, is a way of accounting for your subjectivity. Oo, inaamin namin, subjective yung pamamaraan ng pagkuha ng datos, pero napaliwanag mo bakit ganyan, di ba? Ano yung bias ng researcher, mapapakita mo din yun, di ba? Kasi sa mga statistical methods, di ba? Kailangan tanungin mo lang one way, di ba? Very uniform. So things like this, no? So there is transparency in the theory, method, and the purpose of your study, right? Including your own reflections, how what you learn from the community impacts you. Okay, this is why I couldn't share. No? My books are physical books. This is by Padma Pani Perez, Green Entanglements. No? It's a very good book. And she reflects on how what she sees impacts the way she thinks. So, kailangan pala i-consider itong aspeto. So she saw a lot of logs in one of her field sites and she was saying, wow, this is the most I've seen. So her heart sank And right behind her was some kind of leader that said, um, uh, this will surely feed and educate a lot of people in the area. So yung competing points of views, no? So parang napaisip siya, oh grabe, no? Yung parang, and then also the systems orientation, thinking that this is connected to, who's consuming those logs in the first place, right? Who's consuming the wood? So it's connected to an industry out there. You know? What people do in local communities is connected to an industry. So, that's an example of a critical reflection of including yourself. No? Itong question ng time frame na pag-usapan namin ito ni Dr. Ellie when we were, preparing for this. No? There's long-term, yung 1 year and above. No? In the case of the Barangan, I think that was a 3 year. I was 3 years, maybe even more, no? Medium term, I don't know what, maybe few months, maybe less than a year. Shorter term would be, sabi ni Ellie, ano to? Siya na magpaliwanag ng karanasan niya. I don't want to misinterpret his experience. So yun. Yung 1 year, you could be a lone wolf doing very long-term research. You could do it by yourself. And the length of time depends on so many, ang daming factors eh. No? Kaya lahat, long-term, short-term, medium-term, ginagawa naman natin lahat yan. No? He said, depending on your purpose and questions, no? Depending on academic cycles. So halimbawa, ang semester, like sa inyo, how long will you do this research? What is the intention? 1 year, 1 semester, 1 summer, no? Within this training session, how long do you plan to do it? So it also depends on, especially if you're a student or a graduate student, it's within the academic cycle. Yung isa pa, funding priorities. Who can fund 3 years on field, okay? Including all your accommodations, pagkain, daming gastos, no, di ba? Who can fund that now, di ba? Unless may mag-freebie sa'yo dun sa area, no? Nagkukupin ka at sagutin lahat ng gastos mo. So definitely, the agreement is, no, kaya short-term man yan, kaya long-term, you understand the philosophies of anthropology. No? You are clear on your framework. No? Anong teorya ginagamit mo or gusto mo i-consider, no? Saan ka nang gagaling, anong approach, no, ang ina-apply mo doon sa investigation mo, as a research mo. Tapos yung panghuli, sabi namin, I did long-term research when I could do it. No? Ngayon, hindi ko na magawa. Nung naging nanay ako, hindi ko basta maiwan yung anak ko. Ayoko naman dalhin yung anak ko na wala siyang choice dahil baby pa siya, di ba? Hindi pa niya masabi na ayoko pumunta doon, no? At ngayon, alam ko sigurado ayaw niya pumunta sa field, no? Kasi sinabihan ako, pwede mo naman dalhin yung anak mo, hindi ko mabitbit. Ako nasa field dahil pinili ko yon, di ba? Tapos, in quotes, aging. Hindi ko alam kung kaya ko paggawin. Sa totoo lang, yung paglalakad sa bundok, maglakad sa putik hanggang tuhod, no? Yung sumakay sa tuktok ng jeep. Hindi ko na alam kung kaya ko maglakad ng ilang kilometro ba yun sa bundukin. Hindi ko na kaya, di ba? So, yan ang mga considerations. Or dahil na komportable din naman tayo sa sarili nating tahanan, di ba? Yung we can be ourselves, no? You can be yourself in the field also, but minsan namamahay yung, di ba, yung katawan natin, parang sarap mag-relax sa sariling comfort zone, di ba? So yung mga ganong bagay, yan ang magsasabi sa'yo na ng length of time. But definitely, ang masasabi ko, advantage talaga ang long-time field work. No? Kasi ma-validate mo yung datos mo. Pwede mong balik-balikan yung mga hindi mo naiintindihan. No? You can build trust and rapport. No? Bago ako nakasama sa mangingisda, that was my major feat. I consider being able to join the fishermen in the overnight doon sa baklad nila. Kasi, di ba, ba't ka nandyan? Di ba, kababaeng tao mo. Parang fishers are associated as a man's world. Diba? So parang, pero sa haba ng panahon na nandun ako, alam na nila na talagang seryoso ako sa ginagawa ko, na hindi ako maglalandi dun sa kanilang mga asawa, ganon. Mga ganong klaseng ano. So there are very big advantages of long-term fieldwork, no? Tapos yung alam mo yung community dynamics, bakit ito yung sinasabi niya tungkol sa isang tao, di ba? Bakit gano'n? Bakit masama ang pagtingin? Yung pala may conflict, may political conflict sila. Yung mga ganong klaseng dynamics of village life. No? You see the seasonal shifts, the rhythms, and cycles of the village. This will be discussed later. No? So I will not belabor this idea. Bakit blanco? Okay. Kaya blanco, pause. Baka may tanong kayo or we can reserve the questions for later. What is always asked is, what are we doing research for? Diba? This is another thing, no, that I agree in the range of why we do research. We document because we establish baseline data, no? If nothing has been found about it. Hindi pa na-explore yung topic. Or you see it in a new way. Explaining social issues, I think Ellie described this. Nuanced understanding, challenging assumptions, no? Even your own assumptions. Okay, never mind the example because I might put my foot in my mouth. Informing public policy, no? Pwedeng gamitin basis for making, for understanding, di ba? Hindi pwedeng one size fits all in a policy. What you consider, ito yung different aspects and complexity of what you capture, di ba? In real life. Kasi hindi lang imagine, kung ano talagang nagaganap. No? I like applied knowledge. So itong mga huli, this is maybe academic, no? But here, towards the end, no? Problem solving. So paano natin isusolusyonan yung ating predicament, no, of undergoing a pandemic which is turning into an endemic condition now, di ba? What are the needs? No? What do small communities need? I'll give one very good example kasi minsan iba yung priority ng government or ng World Health Organization compared to the priorities of people in an area. So like si Dr. Araceli, sabi niya in her area, tayo pinoproblema niya infection, di ba? Spreading the disease. But in the area, the problem was how to eat, no? How to survive. So the priorities are different, but you have to address both. We're not saying that the pandemic doesn't exist. It is a real problem, no? But there are also other pressing issues at the local level. That's why we have to see the different levels. So yan ang favorite ko to ng ano, si John Van Willingen yun eh. Who I remember reading his, and that's why right after graduation, I made a beeline to the first job I can get outside the academy. No? Kasi yung idea na anong pwedeng gawin dun sa matutuklasan mo or nalalaman mo doon. How do you apply the theory, the methods, the knowledge, no, in solving problems. So ito, very worthwhile. But I would say all of these are worthwhile endeavors. So ito qualitative, quantitative, wag ko na itong palagunin, no? But you capture process, deep dive, no? Into deep dive in understanding. Medyo paulit-ulit pero ganun talaga, no? We repeat, no, until it is part of our being and understanding, no? So I included some photos. Bakit ko nga ba ito sinama dito? Okay. So, huwag na kasi meron tayong visual antro discussion. No? But just to say that maraming kahulugan to or paano paghahatian ito, no? Doesn't have to be through quantitative. Hindi kailangan malaman mo may magsabi sa iyo ng 1,000 times, no, that this is how you process dried fish, or 1,000 times this is how you capture the fish. So another principle would be the flexibility, no? To a certain degree, parang kaladkarin kaladkarin na nga tayo, di ba, as researchers. You go with the flow, no? Pwede ka magplano ng pinakamagandang kalendaryo, step by step, no? As well planned as this sharing. However, you have to plan for disruptions in those plans, no? So yung mga estudyante ko, they went to the field. Nakaplano na yung FGD nila, they did the groundwork and everything. Pagdating sa area, nagkaroon ng emergency yung health worker na kausap nila. So, at that moment, you have to figure out, anong gagawin natin? Nandito na tayo, diba? So they had to, figure out how to make use of their time. They organized and they found other group members that could join their FGD. No? Kasi, yung isa pa, kung kunyari nag-schedule ka ng interview, pwede mo naman, pwede mong i-address yan. No? Pwede mong baguhin yung schedule. No? So, ito pa, Mr. Gieb, si Ellie, know that these guidelines and these principles can very well be challenged. It's a challenge ka. Kahit kagaya ko na challenge ako, ano nga ba yung brand of answer ko? Diba? To think, pwede magbago to. What are the other principles? Being sensitive to others' sensibilities. No? Yung pagiging relativistic. That you build relationships, and I'd like to emphasize this, no? Yung conduct ethical research. Hindi lang para i-elevate yung career ninyo, di ba? We do. We have a career because of our experience, but you have to be very honest in terms of number one, giving attribution where attribution is due. Not fabricating data, diba? Being very truthful. So, kunyari, yung pagiging objective, pag-eliminate ng outliers, sa atin, kasama yan. Kasama sa paliwanag. No? Kahit konti lang sila. No? So, yung one of the very good papers I saw from health science students, no, had to do with looking at orphan diseases. So, orphan diseases, what are these? No? These are diseases that are very few and rare, pero bulabog naman yung mundo ng tao na may sakit na yan. It changes everything. So it is not the common diseases we know about, diabetes, cardiovascular diseases. No? These are diseases Crohn's, no? Very rare, without any medicines. No? So parang sinasabi, wag natin kalimutan yung hindi karamihan. No? So I think I will end with that because as Ellie said, ang daming philosophies, ang daming theories and approaches, ang dami rin methods that you will all go through in this seminar that my other colleagues will tease for you. So here are some references. So I'll stop sharing and I hope I did not overspeak. So this is the end of the line for us. I don't know how you're feeling. Or do you have online fatigue and would you like to take a break? No? Do we take a do we take a break or do we go to the question and answer?
Thank you very much, Ma'am Zuyen Roldan, for your discussion. So we can have a break for 15 minutes. Thank you.
So see you.
See you in 15 minutes. Ma'am Suyen for the discussion on the overview of ethnography. We have questions in the chat box. I could see that Sir Ellie is answering the questions, but of course, for the sake of those who are watching us on Facebook and YouTube, allow me to read a question po. The first question is coming from Abner Jose Villar of the College of Education. The first question is, how can we conduct ethnographic research with the limitations brought by COVID-19? Can it be done virtually? So our esteemed speakers, Sir Ellie or Mama Suyen, can answer.
Sino mo na? Yeah, siguro, yeah. We can do now, we now have what we now call online ethnography. Although we are still exploring the strengths, the limits, the possibilities, and what can possibly cover and what we cannot possibly cover in this kind of setup. Now, gusto ko lang idagdag, in my work as, let's say, I focus more on fisher communities. What is interesting, for instance, there's a lot of documentation coming from fishers themselves and uploaded on YouTube. Kaya nung sabi ko, wow, baka hindi ko na kinakailangan mag-deep sea diving. Hindi ko na kasi dinocument na ng mangingisda mismo ang buhay nila and they are aware that they are documenting themselves. Sabi ko, this is a new phenomenon. Unlike before, ang nakakapag-document, yung may dalang camera, yung may dalang papel, may dalang computer. What is good right now, ayok sabihin good because of the pandemic, perhaps because of circumstances, and certain contexts, yung pa siguro yung mahalaga yung context. Now, fishers themselves are documenting themselves. And pag sinusundan ko talaga sa YouTube sila, ang dami-dami nila at ang dami kong natututunan. So sabi ko, perhaps this is one way of opening up certain roads that may seem inaccessible this time. So that's one possibility. Of course, we have to look for other possibilities of in-person or a combination of in-person and online. So mga possibility dito na pwede natin explore. Pero online is one possibility now.
Okay. Yeah, it's a challenge. Even in my case, I'm supposed to follow up a paper I presented. Tapos hindi ko magawa kasi nga yung part na nawawala, yung pagpunta sa area, di ba? So, ang hirap na. Pero, here's where flexibility comes in, di ba? And creativity. I think it's not just about flexibility, it's creativity is what it is, that we have to find ways to be able to do things. So, in PSSC, there's now a course online, digital, di ba? So, digital documentation. There are anthropologists that do online, the online community as their community. Hindi ko nasabi si Cora Lamog, who also, she did work in Camarines Norte, and she says how we define our community. Kasi ang daming communities di ba? So, pati online pwede, pati online, offline. And here's the thing, anthropologists are very flexible. They can figure out where they can go. One. Si Dr. Mary, remember Ellie, when we had our naging online ng conference ng UCAT for 1 month, she was talking about cell phone interviews, so ganun, back and forth sila when they did their documentation. It was a conversation between her and the community leaders and the community, so parang nakapagsulat sila. But then they had, out of those short interviews, marami siyang publications in Rappler, and her co-authors are the people from the community, kasama doon sa Actually, yan ang gusto ko sa ugat. It's one way of making things more equal, diba? That okay, they could not write, but it's their ideas and concepts. So kasama sila sa authorship. Yeah. So yun lang muna. Creativity, I don't know how creative I can get. I still want, there's nothing like, face-to-face. But in the absence of, we make do. Like, this would have been so much better if it were a face-to-face conference. But we adapt, we try to do our best to be able to transmit our knowledge and have a conversation with each other, mga ganung klase. So yun lang.
Dagdagan ko pa ulit, siguro. No? Now, this is I think, one of the challenges in this new kind of space. No? Siguro we're so used to understand this space only in the physical sense. Okay? Well, kung magiging philosophical tayo sa aspect ng space, sasabihin ng bang scholars, we can produce space. And perhaps this is one way of creating new spaces, a new kind of space that we haven't completely explored yet. Nakakatuwa nga yung mga mas bata, mas sanay na sila sa espasyong ito. I'm not saying that that is more real than the others, but the point here is perhaps time to explore this new space being offered to us by this world, okay? We may like it, we may dislike it, we may completely abandon it and just proceed with the kind of space with which we are more familiar. Pero baka may ino-offer na ibang pananaw at pagkabuhay sa espasyong ito. Ibang usapin to kung gaanong significance ito sa buhay. That's another story, hindi mo na yan. Pero let's say, sa mga estudyante ko sa media, minsan mas totoo yung virtual space for them. I'm not saying that ibang usapin yung sa ethics, but there are other spaces perhaps that we have yet to explore as anthropologists, and perhaps time to reevaluate perhaps also yung existence natin, ontological existence natin. Is this the only space available for us? And now this new world is providing us with new spaces, hanggang saan ako pwedeng pumasok? This is something that we have to think about as well. Actually, baka nga ito yung mga challenges na inihaharap sa atin ngayon. Kung paano natin i-explore ang mga challenges na ito at paano natin gagawing meaningful ang mga challenges na ito, siguro doon tayo magkakatalo, okay? O magkakadebate. How do we make these new spaces more meaningful to us as humans? Okay, siguro sa ganun ko muna, how to translate that idea into more concrete terms, explore natin. Wag lang siguro tayong matakot na explore at sabihin, mali ang space na yan. Ako hindi kagad ganun. Hindi ko sabihin completely mali or kulang. Baka meron tong ibang mga katotohanan na pwede nating tingnan na hindi natin nakita in person. Baka lang naman, may tanong nga dito, how valid is that? Anong reliability, anong validity? Maraming tests yan. Baka ibang test of reliability and validity rin ang gagamitin natin kapag online spaces ang pinapasok natin. And we're still exploring these spaces. So mga bata, baka na-explore na nila yung virtual reality. Wow, Sa media pinag-usapan na, at sasabihin ba dating peke yung realidad na yon? No. It is a lived reality. It is empirical reality. It is not just a virtual off-person reality. It is a lived reality. How do we explore that lived reality beyond our understanding of physical reality? And that also is physical reality. Hindi lang natin damo yung physicalidad nun. Baka hindi tayong gagawa ng research nun. Okay natin explore. Pero yun ang point, yun ang challenge sa atin. Ano ang anthropological truth ng space na yan? Baka lang,
Thank you po. So, allow me to read a comment from Irvin Bikilio of Canar. Thanks po, Sir Ellie and Ma'am Suyen for sharing ethnography. I'm inspired again to continue my research with Bataks of Palawan, indigenous knowledge system and practices during my undergrad at UPLB. Here's another question po, Sir Ma'am. Can you consider that the researcher's disposition or character playing an important role in the success of their research, since immersion and interacting with people demand more compassion and patience than scientific knowledge?
yan yung sinasabi natin kanina na reflexivity. Mas maganda na yung papasukin nating research ay isang research na mas willing tayong ibigay ang ating mga sarili. Ang hirap pumasok sa isang research, sa anumang uri ng relasyon, na hindi mo kayang ibigay ang iyong sarili. Ito lagi ko sinasabi sa aking, kahit sa research class ko, no? Yung thesis proposal, first year, second sem kasi yung first sem, second sem yung research. Sabi ko sa proposal pa lang, ang gawin yung research yung kaya mong mahalin kahit for minimum of 1 year. Beyond that, pwede. Pero kung hindi ka makapagbibigay ng pagmamahal sa tanong na yan, bitawan mo na. Baka ginagawa mo lang yan dahil trip mo, yun ang uso. No. Tiyakin mo, kaya mo yung mahalin sa buong minimum of 1 year kahit na pwede ka pa rin magbago later kung talagang nakita mong di ba na kaya. But the point there is, yes, compassion is basic. No? Marami tayong scientists, yung tinatawag natin hardcore scientists. Hindi naman yung simpleng ganun lang. May passion kasi sila sa ginawa nila. Kaya tuloy-tuloy nilang ginagawa yun. Sa ganun kung gusto siguro masagot kayo. Baka mas malalim sasabihin ni, mas iba sasabihin si Suyan.
Totoo, no? Yung pag-establish ng relasyon, ang hirap nun na, kahit sa pag-ibig. Ang hirap yun. But tama, how you relate has an impact in the data you gather. Who you relate with has an impact. So kung masyado kang dumidikit sa isang informant na, anong tawag ito, na close kayo, tapos ayaw, yung kaaway naman pala ng madla, diba, anong klaseng datos makukuha mo? Hindi magbubukas sa'yo yung mga tao. Meron din ako, parang palagi kasi tinatanong sa amin sa when we have these conversations, the succeeding question is, how do you make people like you? So, mapilit mo ba yan? Di ba? How do you make, di ba? It was a very good, candid question kasi nga yung para ka pakinggan or para ka bigyan ng impormasyon, kailangan may synergy, di ba? Kailangan meron kayong, it clicks, no? Just like our relationships that we have anywhere we take it, no? So hanggang sa field ganun siya. May experience kami na kahit 2 taon na kami nasa malagi sa area, hindi pa rin kami gusto, di ba? Yung pala kaaway niya yung host family namin. May mga ganong klaseng dynamics na dapat alam mo, di ba? So parang, so just don't take things personally. Parang iniisip, but you always be cordial. That's where I come from. Sinigaw-sigawan na ako sa area, di ba? Pinagkamalan na ng masamang elemento, di ba? Pero kalmado pa rin. Okay, para parang babatiin mo pa rin siya pag encounter mo, gano'n. Para, ba't ka makikisabay at makikipag-away dun sa tao? Di parang, di ba, anong nangyari dyan? Di ba? Hindi maganda. So, yun lang yung pwede kong sabihin.
Dagdag ko pa siguro, no? Siguro iba nating karanasan sa ang dami-daming karanasan sa edad namin to, no? Siguro I'll share this with you, no? Isa kong experience sa isang research site, sa aking PhD research site, no? A year before the actual research, nagkaroon muna ako talaga ng group meeting, no? And in several group meetings, iba't-ibang sectors kasi in one community, iba't-ibang sectors, I could not gather them all together in one session. So hiwa-hiwalay. And in one session with women, no? Siguro, I was expecting only about 10. Then suddenly, it's about 70 women in that huge room. Barangays, hindi, eskwelahan, no? Sa isang isla. No? Maraming tanong. Of course, pinaliwanag ko kung research, anong gagawin ko next year, gano'n. No? And then, may isang tumayong matanda ang sinabi sa akin, Ellie, anong may tutulong ng research mo sa buhay namin? No? Papasok ka dito, nakita ka na namin last year, papasok ka dito, may magbabago ba sa buhay namin? At napakadiretso ng kanyang tanong. Ang tanong pa nga niya is, dating ka rito, pag natapos ka dito, doktor ka, mapopromote ka, tataas ang sweldo mo, kung tataas man, tataas ang sweldo mo down the line. Pero kami, iiwanan mo, mananatili kaming mangingisda. At mangingisda pa rin. Okay? Sabi ko, Ellie, just have to be transparent, you just have to be honest. Diretso. Lagi kong principle yon, honesty and transparency. Kahit na mapahamak ka at palayasin ka, at least naging honest ka. No? Ang sinabi ko lang, hindi ko po inaalis na nandun yung posibilidad na ako ay ma-promote. Hindi ko inaalis yun. At isang realidad yun ng aking profesyon. Okay? Hindi ko rin naalis na sa pag-promote yan sa gobyerno, ewan ko gano'ng kataas ang tataas ng sweldo. Pero the point here is, sabi ko, hindi ko rin naman po inaalis na mananatili kayong mangingisda. At hindi naman po maging masama na maging mangingisda. Okay? Pero ang sinasabi ko po rito ay, may mga bagay po na labas na sa akin. No? Hindi po ipinapangako ng research na ito na babaguhin ito ang buhay ninyo. Kahit na gustuhin ko na makatulong ng maliit sa inyong mga buhay. Pero hindi ko may papangako mababago ang buhay ninyo. Siguro sa ganun lang po ako magsisimula sa ating lahat. No? May mga bagay na hindi ko kaya. May mga bagay na kayang gawin ng research. Pero kahit kayang gawin ng research, hindi ko po tiyak kung talagang sa inyo mapupunta ang benepisyo ng research. Kasi marami po pong bagay na labas sa aking control. Pero ang ititiyak ko po sa inyo, magiging tapat ako sa pakikisalamuha sa inyo. Gusto man ninyo ako o hindi. Ang mabigat nito, yung nagtanong na yon ay araw-araw nagbibigay sa akin ng datos. Sinasabihan ko pa minsan, hindi ko na po kailangan yan. Sobra na po yan, hindi na po yan ang aking research. Hindi, baka lang kailangan mo, ito pa. No? So, perhaps that's one of the key factors, no? Transparency, honesty, even nga funding, you have to tell them how and where the funding comes from. No? Yung ganun. So, in that way, naka-establish lalo ako ng rapport. No? Mahalaga yung rapport. Of course, may mga issues tayo ng reactivity issues yung tinatawag sa research. No? How valid is the response to you? No? How valid is the data they provide you? No? But that's another issue. Siguro pag-usapan natin pagdating sa methods. Pero in principle, in philosophy, that's how we have dealt these things so no? Enjoy, no? Sa ating mga research. But it takes sometimes years, no? to acquire that. Kasi nung bata-bata ako, hindi pa makakatulong po ito. Yeah. Maliligtas po ang sambayanan. No? Pero I'm not saying that's wrong. Pero minsan sometimes go back to the humanity of ourselves and they will respond to you in the most possible humane way. Of course, not all the time. At kung hindi nila gusto ang response mo, tanggapin mo.
Thank you, sir. So here's another sharing of idea from Sir Irvin. Let me read. Collaboration and cooperation are keywords we can practice this time that we need to do research starting within our community, locality, where IPs of Manili thrive on how they cope up in terms of agriculture and natural resources during pandemic situations. We have here another question, this time from Alvin Herrera. Is the ethnographic perspective connected with the history from below? And how can we associate this to different points of view?
Yeah. Sige, ako na muna ngayon so yan. No? Okay. Now, totoong maraming points of view. We do not discount that. No? So kaya nga sasabihin ng iba, yung isang set of scholars, no, baka hindi mo makapture lahat. Okay? Pero dapat tiyakin mong tama pa rin yung nakikita mo. At kung meron kang hindi nakikita, dahil this is the view from where you are coming. Maraming research na talagang history from below at talagang maraming ganun sa anthro. No? Kaya iginigit yun dahil ito yung realidad na ayaw tanggapin ng lipunan. But it is a reality. That's why we come from that position. Bakit yung realidad ng komunidad ayaw niyong tanggapin? That's why we are documenting those kinds of reality or that kind of reality. No? Kasi ito yung realidad na existing pero ayaw niyong pansinin. Kaya we come from that position. Okay? But we're not saying other realities do not exist, that only that kind of reality exists. No, we're saying that we prefer to give more value to this kind of reality kasi this is the reality or these kinds of reality that have been neglected. No? Kaya in that sense, it is taking, you know your position, but still it is objective kahit na meron kang position na pinanggagalingan. Objective pa rin dapat lahat. Dumating nga ang punto na minsan, yung sinabi ni Suyan kanina, no? Sometimes you have to question even your own beliefs, no? Dahil iba ang ipinakita ng datos. Even your political beliefs, if required, dahil iba ang ipinakita ng datos. Willing ka bang tingnan yon? Dahil yun ang katotohanan ng mga datos, hindi ang katotohanan lang ng isang pananaw na inakala mong tama. Yun ang sinasabi ng iba, talagang encounter eh. You cannot dissociate yourself from the realities in which you are immersing yourself. At to the point na hindi lang sila ang natututo, o hindi lang ikaw kumukuha ng impormasyon sa kanila, no? Natututo ka rin sa iyong sarili, no? At baka willing ka bang harapin ang sarili mo oras na ikaw ay pumasok sa isang ethnographic encounter? Yun ang tanong ng ibang schools of thought, no? Para tuloy akong pare. Pero yun ang karanasan ko. Yun ang karanasan kong gusto ko i-share. Sige, so yun.
Hindi na ako magdadagdag kasi na-capture mo na. Parang yung tanong kasi ang ano yun, pakiulit yung tanong nga. Ano ba
yung history from below?
Yes.
History from
yung pagpanig sa...
Is the ethnographic perspective connected with the history from below, and how can we associate this to two different points of view?
Yeah, yun talaga, like Ellie said, it's ethnography to get the different histories. Pati nga one person di ba? Yung history natin nagbabago. We're one person. In fact, Michael Agar, he says, yung individual, hindi lang isa yung kultura niya. Dami niyang kultura, di ba? Kasi we're exposed to several cultures. So he calls, parang, ayaw na nga niya yung gamitin yung culture, but because it's a very well accepted concept, di ba? That we all understand. The other point is, we also exude our culture, depende kung sinong kausap natin at kaharap natin, di ba? Or depende sa sitwasyon. Ano yung, di ba, context na, kunyari sa pamilya ko, pakialam nila sa fieldwork, ayaw nila malaman yung ginagawa ko, di ba? Pero pag kayong kaharap ko, okay, I can talk about my experiences, di ba? Yung mga ganon. Iba kasi yung value depending on where you are. So that's the importance of considering the different things that affect the voices of people. So yeah, and you capture what you can. That's the whole point.
Thank you, ma'am. The next one po is actually a follow-up question. Other question relative to the virtual conduct of ethnographic research. So the question comes from Sir Abner. How reliable po is the data from virtual ethnographic study?
Okay, sige, so yun.
How reliable are the things we're sharing with you now in this online setting?
nice response, yeah.
How I would that you can't tell even in a face-to-face encounter. Malay mo na totoo yung sinasabi niya sa'yo. Hindi mo alam yun diba? How we cannot read minds. Yeah, we can only and this is where the long time encounter helps, because you find out the dynamics of where the information is coming from.
Yeah, maganda yun, no? Lahat naman ng datos, kahit in person yan, dapat lagi mo pa rin naman ko-questionin. Mahalaga rin yan. Hindi naman automatic tanggap ng tanggap. While trust is there and you would like to assume that the data is valid, no? Or the sets of data are valid, no? You still have to do some triangulation na napakahalaga, no? Baka kinakailangan magpunta halimbawa sa isang records office para matiyak mo kung naganap na ito. Halimbawa, yung isang tanong ko, when I was trying to trace when blast fishing started in the area, no? Okay? Of course, narratives of elders natin, 1930 siya, nagsimula na yan. Pero dati wala, no? Ganun napaka-romantic ng tingin sa nakaraan, no? Oh, noong 1920s, kung datingan lang yung mga dayo dito, naganap yan. I accept that. Pero I decided to check church records, no? Kung kailan, yung death records, kasi na-identify doon yung mga lumang 1900-something, no? Na records. Meron pa nga late 19th century, 18-something, no? 1890s plan, no? nakalagay doon yung cause of death, no? Nagulat ako doon sa records ng death nila, nakalagay yung cause, no? Of course, ang hirap lang intindi ng sulat, but you try your best to discern the penmanship, no? At Espanyol pa yung iba, no? So, nakasulat doon, cause of death, nakalagay dynamite. Wow, dynamite. Of course, di naman ang tamang term dynamite, blast fish, no? Okay. Pero, sabi ko, so, hindi totoong malinis ang pangingisda noon, no? As early as night. At saan naganap to? Although sinasabi taga ganito siya, although pwedeng mangyari yon some elsewhere, pero taga, let's say, taga barangay X, pero pwedeng naganap yun elsewhere. But the point is, may record eh. So, nagre-rely ka rin sa narrative, oral literature, oral narratives, and print records, at kinukuhan mo yan. Kino-combine mo yan. Of course, pwedeng pa rin questionin yung print record. Baka nga mali lang ang pagkasulat. But the point here is, there are ways to test, there are systematic ways as well, no, of testing reliability and validity. Okay? And there are, may mga method din talagang dapat natingnan ganyan. Isa pa halimbawa, merong isang style or strategy sa method na sinasabi, we call this the response effect. No? Totoo naman na pag humarap ka sa isang tao, hindi mo exactly pa makukuha yung buong katotohanan. No? Ang nakukuha mo lang muna ay yung katotohanan batay sa ugnayan mo sa isa't isa. Kaya ang ina-assume dyan, mas malalim ang pagkakilala, mas posibleng, hindi mo sinasabi exactly kaagad mas posibleng pwedeng pagkatiwalaan ng datos. Kaya napakahalaga talaga ng longer stay kung minsan. Pero hindi naman ibig sabihin nun, hindi ka rin makakakuha ng totoong ng malinaw na datos, mataas na validity ng datos kapag maiksi yung stay mo. Pwede pa rin yan. May mga pagkakataon naman, may mga batay naman sa ilang mga karanasan ng iba. Halimbawa, meron kang gusto mong panoorin paano silang mag-interact sa isa't isa, may ganun, no? Minsan nga, ang method mo ay yung first 3 or 5 minutes nung makita mo sila sa lugar. Yung lang ang kikilalanin mong datos. After 5 minutes, hindi mo na siya, kahit nandun ka pa ng 2 hours, hindi mo na yung isasama sa quad. Kasi para sa'yo, pero ito method na ito, no? Strategies na ito, no? Yung first 5 minutes na nakita mo sila doon sa lugar, yun lang ang i-record ng utak mo. No? And the rest, either input sa dagdag na kaalaman o hindi. Pero methods na yan, maraming paraan yan. Pero there are ways. The point here is, even in a supposedly highly personal encounter with people, there are ways to test validity and reliability. Mahalaga pa rin yan sa atin. Validity and reliability.
Thank you, sir. So here's another question po. Yes, ma'am. Yes po. Please go ahead.
Okay, 2 points lang picking up from what Ellie said, na pwedeng ang may kalumaan yung paggamit ng blast fishing. Kasi naalala ko sa isang area, yung source ng pulbura galing din sa mga iniwan ng World War. So pwede nga siyang, diba, bomba, mga bomba na iniwan, diba, disassemble nila. Isa yan sa mga sources. So isa lang. Pero going back to reliability, kasi that's a very important question. That's why I want to talk about it. Na, kasi kung records lang yung, parang kailangan talaga triangulation or more than even 3 points. Kasi triangulation, 3 sources of information. Kahit mas damihan mo, mas maganda pa yan. Kasi kung records lang yung tinignan ko, hindi ko ma-uncover hindi ko malaman na ganito pala 20 to 30% sinishare nila among themselves. So hindi unless nandun ka, no? May records nang sinasubmit sa store, kasama ka doon sa pag-record, hindi mo yan malaman. So, tapos titignan mo pa yung datos ng nakukuha ng Marine Science Institute, yung ganun. So ang dami mong pagkukuhanan ng datos. I don't know if they're fish landings, pumunta ka sa palengke. Ang daming paraan para i-weave yung information so that you can best come up with descriptions or, find out ano yung totoo dito or paano sila magkakonektado. Parang yan ang trabaho talaga ng researcher. Pagtahi-tahiin lahat ng informasyon at alin dito yung may sense alin dito yung pwede, ay ito, mali ito, di ba? Yun ang trabaho mo to figure out. But I guess that can even be more discussed lengthily doon sa yung magdi-discuss ng research methods. Pero yan lang, I mean kasi we think that these are very important questions that you're asking that have to be answered right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, ma'am. So, my question pa po, okay lang po? Can I proceed with the questions?
Yeah.
So, the question is actually connected to the thought or idea shared a while ago by Sir Irvin Viquilio. He says, can I continue my research on documentation of indigenous knowledge system and practices of Batak tribe in Palawan by updating on the community I was when my college days long time ago? I hope I can learn more from your group. Thanks po Sir Eli and Ma'am Suyen and the team UGAT for sharing.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, pwede naman talaga lagi. At minsan na kailangang i-update, no? Meron kaming ganung mga data, no? Nakuha ko, let's say, 1997. Of course, nagkaroon ka lang ng luxury of time, kung sabihin man natin gano'n, no? Pero if there's already an opportunity to update those sets of data, then you need to, kasi nagbabago naman ang kultura, nagbabago ang buhay. 1997 data, hindi mo pwedeng sabihin ganyan pa rin ang bata, no? Pagpunta mo rin, baka magulat ka, no? Wow, ang gaganda ng cellphone, mas maganda pa sa cellphone mo, no? Magugulat, and actually, you should not be surprised because that's life, no? At baka hindi mo in-account yung mga ganong klaseng realidad ngayon. So you really, magandang ina-update kung kakayanin din lang naman. O kung hindi man, that can be your masters, no? At ang focus lang muna ay description of the material culture, that's fine, no? Saka na muna kung bakit naging ganyan, that's another story. But the point here is, yes, magandang mabalikan yung mga lumang datos, no? At meron kami mga ganon, minsan binabalikan namin yung lumang datos, no? Bagong ma-publish o kahit na-publish na, minsan i-correct mo na sa sarili mo, hindi na sa totoo, iba na ang nagaganap ngayon, no? So, yun ang isa sa mga proseso, no? Ng ethnography.
Oh, tama. A lot of the ethnographies, minsan hindi tuloy-tuloy yung pamamalaki sa legal. They go back after 10 years. I went back, ayun nga, yung encounter ko sa Pangasinan, hindi ko maiwan eh. Kasi kahit nag-asawa na ako, kahit tumira na ako sa ibang bansa, bumalik, ganyan. Pagbalik ko, naiisip ko pa rin sila, kamusta na kaya mga tao ito? Ganun. Ano kaya nangyayari? Kahit wala akong contact sa kanila, nakita ko sa news, halimbawa, may fish kills doon sa sa lugar. So parang, ay nako, paano na ngayon yung, parang kinoconnect mo rin. And here's the thing, can you gather information? What can we do now during na hindi kayo makalabas? Pwede kayo mag-review ng literature. Siguro ang dami na rin nasulat tungkol sa grupo nila, di ba? Yan ang pwedeng tignan kung ano pang mga datos, kung saan pwedeng manggaling ang mga datos. Kung meron ka rin kayong contact, na-discover ko, may Facebook page pala tong lugar na to. So nakita ko yung wow, nagbago yung anyo ng isla, ganyan. Yung mga bahay nilang gagara na, di ba? I-update mo na. Samantalan yung picture na kinuha ko dun sa lugar, talagang nipa, barong-barong pa siya. Yung frontage ng isla, simiento, yung pinuntahan namin na lugar sa, yung una kasi kami wala pang kuryente, yung tubig galing sa mainland. Ngayon may pipe-in water na going to the island. May mga ganong klase na pag-update. So yes, i-update nyo. Meron din mga government sites, di ba? Kasi yung mga gobyerno, meron din sila mga information about particular areas, di ba? About your community. Kung saan sila, pwede mong tignan, ito na yung hindi na siya third-class municipality, first-class na, di ba, yung mga ganong klaseng pag-update. Or yung population nag-increase or nag-decrease or pareho lang, di ba? So ang daming pwedeng sources of information na pwedeng pagkuhanan. And there's no limit when you can do your fieldwork. Diba? So kung ngayon, hindi pa talaga pwede lumabas, paglabas na po, you can be raring to go and have your face-to-face encounter and add to the information. Kasi nga, ang pahabaan diba? Kahit na meron kang academic schedule to submit, okay, you can submit, but we do what we can now. Pwede mo palalimin yan pagtapos. Yun lang.
Siguro kaya doon pumapasok yung sinatawag ng isang school of thought na incomplete. No? Okay? It can never be complete. Tulad ng unang inassume. No? Kasi ang na-capture mo ay nabubuhay ng mga tao. No? Magbabago, magkakaroon ng shift. Kaya ang na-capture mo lang yung moment na na-capture mo. At magbabago yun. Kaya napakahalagang ituloy-tuloy, kung may pagkakataon din lang, no? Ituloy natin dahil para magkaroon tayo ng fulfillment o sense na binubuo siya. Hindi siya yung papunta sa completion. Ito ay pagpapalalim kung saan ka dadalhin ito. Kaya nga minsan napakalaga meron kang mga estudyante na susunod sa yung yapak. No? Actually, yung Dumaracols, yung epic sa Palawan, no? Iba't ibang estudyante na ang dinala ko sa Palawan dahil this is a lifetime effort on my end. No? Since nakita ko siya noong 1997, marinig ko siya, patapos na yung fieldwork ko sa MA noon. So hindi ko na siya nasama sa PhD. After the PhD, binalikan ko siya after 15 years. No? Kailangan kong ituloy yung epic ko. Wala, at over 15, sa 15 years na yun, walang nag-research eh. Na-document na ito 1901 down the line, na-mention ng ibang scholars, pero wala pang nakapag-document ng epic ko. Okay? So sabi ko, kailangan ko balikan. At nung binalikan ko, commitment na ito buong buhay kasi lahat ng isla pupuntahan mo hanggang bago mawala yung kuwan. Pero hindi ko ito matatapos. Sigurado, klaro sa akin yan. Sabi mismo na kumakanta, hindi ito matatapos itong kantang to habang pinapakanta nyo kami. Okay? Talaga nagbabago siya. Oo nga naman, no? Pinapakanta ko kayo lagi. Hindi talaga matatapos siya. No? So, ang point lang doon is, minsan, hahanap ka talaga ng kapalit mo para ipagpatuloy yun. Kung paano yun ang ginagawa natin ngayon sa mga naunang scholars, no? At yun ang ginagawa ng mga mas batang scholars sa mga ilan nang namin nasimulan o ipagpatuloy.
Thank you, sir. So the next question po is from Ma'am Regine Balmaceda. Good morning po. I'm currently conducting an ethno-study in Paracade, Camarines Norte. My participants are the Manatee indigenous peoples. I'm trying to make the chieftain of the community and the midwife of the area as my co-authors. My question po is, since there is a current pandemic, okay lang po ba na most of the interviews be administered by my co-authors instead of me?
I say yes. Research partnership collaboration works. And don't underestimate what people in the community can capture that you cannot capture as an outsider. So yes, like I said, Dr. Mary does it through some community leaders. Kasama siya dun sa authorship. So the answer is yes.
Yeah. And even before the pandemic, kahit naman dati pa, we do have interviewers as well, no? Kung may budget din lang, no? O kahit minsan iba nag-TY, no? We just have to make sure that the instrument or the idea of that interview is captured. No? Baka kasi iba yung pag-interpret ng ilang mga salita. We have to train our interviewers for that. No? Ano bang ibig sabihin ng tanong na to? No? So ito ang itatanong. You train your interviewers as well for that. No? So that can be either as co-authors or as research assistants, no? Depending on the extent of the work. So hindi naman nabawasan ang pagiging researcher mo at pinaubaya mo yung ilang aspects ng research mo. May mga ganun akong research na nung tinatapos ko yung fieldwork ko, yung multi-year research, no? Minsan 1 month akong wala, pero either lilipat ako ibang site or uwi, no? So yung 1 month na yun, either nagsa-survey o nag-hold ng FGD or nag-i-interview yung mga naiwan kong research assistant at may tiwala at ito-check mo naman yung data kung sakali, no? Yung mga ganung bagay. So it happens and it's allowed. It's allowed.
Thank you, sir. So do we have more questions from our participants? You may raise your hands if you want to ask question. in the chat box po, we don't have a question anymore. So all of the questions were answered.
Siguro magcha-challenge ako sa ilang mga participants natin, no? Okay. Kasi itinanong sa akin ng isa kong estudyante, no? Years ago, no? Pag nagulat din ako sa response ko, no? But it comes because of that answer was because of my experience, no? And the reason why we have this to share our experiences as ethnographers, no? Sabi niya, sir, paano kung yung datos ay iba ang sinasabi sa iyong political na pananaw? No? Ang katotohanan ng datos ay iba sa katotohanan ng iyong political na pananaw. Kaninong pananaw ka papanig? Kahit ako, nagulat ako sa sagot ko. No? Ang sinagot ko, pumanig ka sa katotohanan ng datos. Okay? Maganda kung ang iyong datos ay umaayon sa iyong political na pananaw. That's the ideal setup. No? Pero kung iba na ang sinasabi ng empirical data at kailangan mo ng yugyugin ang iyong pagkatao, no? Dahil iba ang sinasabi ng empirical data, baka you need that humility to accept what your data are telling you. Time to challenge. Hindi ko sinasabi palitan mo kagad. No? Time to challenge yourself. Time to challenge your philosophy. Baka nabuhay ka sa ibang realidad, sa buhay ng realidad kung saan ka pumasok. No? Yun. Hindi ko sasabing tama yung sagot ko. I'm just sharing with you an idea. No? I'm not telling you to abandon your political thoughts. Everything. Sabi ko lang, propaganda truth is good and I would appreciate propaganda truth if propaganda truth is based on empirical data. But in moments when there is a divergence, may pagkakaiba at napakabigat ng pagkakaiba. No? Palagay ko, hawak ka at huwag kang bibitaw sa katotohanan ng datos. No? Yun ang, kaya ka nga nag-ethnography, kaya ka nga nag-research. No? Yun, hindi ko sasabing malakay sa akin, no? Pero nag-share ako ng isa ring pananaw o kaganapan sa buhay ko na dulot ng ethnography.
Oo. Agree, Ellie, agree. Kasi nung pumunta ako, yung dinocument ko nga yung concession system, iba yung baon ko na pananaw. Nabago dahil sa nakita ko. Parang people were saying, ang equal yan, mayaman lang makakuha ng ano. Pero nung nakita ko dun sa area, ay hindi totoong mayaman lang yung pwede mag-bid dun sa concession. Kasi binubuno nga nila yung ano So tapos nakita ko yung sharing na nagaganap dun sa ano. So parang sabi ko, well, how do we revise the theory? Diba? So i-revise mo siya o hindi lang siya inequity. Meron din siyang equality within or their sense of what is fair. Diba? Yung sense of fairness within. Kasi yan ang sinabi ng datos. So hindi mo babaguhin yung para maipuwersa mo dun sa acceptable theories. Kasi in the first place, theories, di ba? Kaya nga yan na theory, hindi naman yan katha ng imahinasyon, di ba? May pinanggagalingan din siya. So baka yan lang nang nakita ng ibang tao dahil hindi pa sila nakapasok doon sa loob ng mundo na nakita mo bigla. Fortuitous lang yan, nagising. I mean, what if, kasi nakita ko yan 8 months after Pero what if wala ka doon at that moment, di ba? Na naganap yung event, hindi mo malalaman na ganun pala. And the other story there was, kasi nag-stay kami sa lugar for 2 years. We had another project before that, parang 4 years. So in the late 80s, tapos nakabalik na naman ako in the early 90s. Ganun. May gap ng 2 years. Matagal ko na naririnig yung tungkol sa concession na yan, pero nalaman ko lang yung talagang nandun ako sa area. So ganun. So being truthful as a researcher depends on what you capture na, and you have to talk about that. And that's why you also include, ito nga yung initial na pagtingin ko, pero nagbago dahil sa nakita mo. At sa na-gather mo na ebidensya at saka datos dun sa lugar.
Dagdag pa, no? Yung sinabi ko kanina on the personal level as a researcher, pero ito, nangyari din itong totoo, no? Yung isa kung saan ako gumawa ng isang research sa isang isla, no? This is Handayan Norte, no? In Handayan Island in particular, no? Sa Bohol, no? Ang description talaga sa lugar, fishing village. Lahat naman fishing village, isla, fishing village, no? Pero nung nag-conduct ako ng census, census kasi maliit lang naman yung populasyon ng barangay, about 100 plus individuals, no? So, o households. So sabi ko, household census na gawin ko kaysa pa mag-survey lang, no? So nilahat ko na. At economic census, at yung may patanong ako, ano ay consider ninyong primary source of income, no? Okay? Of course, nung bago natapos yung census, tanong sa kanilang mga pangisdaan, anong ginagamit na materyales, down the line, ano nahuhuling isda, gano'ng karami, down the line. Pero lumabas sa census, doon sa barangay na yon, na tinatawag ng fishing village, ay 25% lang ang full-time mangingisda. At remaining 75% ay wage workers. So sabi ko, grabe, we've been describing this barangay of this island as a fishing village when empirically it is a village of wage workers. Mga barangay ng mga manggagawa, no? Sa pabrika na hindi sa lugar nakikita dahil walang pabrika, pero mga manggagawa sa Cebu, manggagawa sa Maynila, security guard dito, down the line sa Mindanao. In short, this is a community of wage workers, and not only, hindi ko naman sinasabing hindi na siya community of fishing communities, fishing families, no, or households, but this is mainly a community of wage workers and only partly a community of fishers. So sabi ko, kung hindi ko nagawa iyon, no, kaya pala sabi ko, yung iba hindi matanong anong pangisdaan ko, anong tools of fishing ang ginagamit, anong isda na nahuhuli nila, dahil hindi sila mangingisda. And I was really astounded, surprised, you know, when I looked at those census data nung na-systematize na namin. So, ito yung ilang mga bagay na sinasabi. Sa buhaton, hindi ko na siya tinatawag na fishing community. Ang tawag ko na, partly a fishing community, but mainly a community of wage workers. Now, kung papasok ka sa intervention, magdadala ka ng lalong maraming bangka, mali ang iyong policy, mali ang iyong intervention. Okay? Pasok ka ng pasok sa dahil nakala mong mangingisda sila dahil sila ang nakikita mong mga bangka. Teka, hindi pala dapat yun ang pasok ko. Baka tapos paano mo maharapin yung wage work nila? Isa pang halimbawa, sorry, daldal ko talaga, bawalan niyo ako. Isa pang halimbawa, yung tinatanong, I won't mention the organization, no? Basta one time tinatanong ako, actually it was an informal conversation, not really a formal meeting for a project. Sabi lang niya, Eli, paano ba natin tutulungan yung rice terraces? Nasisira na down the line. Okay. Buti pa nga yung mga tagalabas, tumutulong sila. Yung mga tagaloob na rice terraces, umaalis sila sa lugar. Pero kung pag-aaralan ninyo ang konteksto ng rice terraces, itinayo yan, hindi naman sinabi ng mga katubo, halika, sama-sama tayo, magtayo tayo ng rice terraces para maging 8th wonder of the world. Tinayo yan because of an agricultural system. Okay? Nasisira siya dahil namamatay ang agrikultura. So sabi ko, the best way to conserve or preserve, kung gusto man natin i-preserve, no, ang rice terraces ay, hindi ko sinasabing mali yung tourism support. Ang sinasabi ko, mainly support the agriculture of that huge mountain. Diyan nakasalalay ang pundasyon ng pagkabuo ng rice terraces. So sabi ko, yung empirical data ang nagsasabi na sila ay mga magsasaka. Pero bakit ang tuon ng pasok natin ay palayo sa pagsasaka? Okay? So minsan ito yung dahil pananaw natin yan, no? Yung mga, or kung talagang ayaw na nating suporta ng pagsasaka ng rice terraces, edi dapat may willingness tayong i-abandon na hindi na siya rice terraces. No? Magtatayo ka na lang ng fake magsasaka dyan para mag-maintain yung tourism. Of course, that is contentious. No? Ayoko sabihin, nire-recommend ko yan. No? Ang sinasabi ko lang is, you really have to rely on empirical data for the intervention to be perhaps more meaningful and substantial. Perhaps, just perhaps.
Thank you so much, Sir Ellie and Ma'am Suyem, for sharing your personal practical experiences on research. So at this point, will be no more questions. We don't have questions anymore from the chat box. So I think we are now ready to award the certificate to our resource speakers. Allow me to read the citation. Certificate of Commendation is awarded to Eli R. Dieb III in grateful recognition of his distinguished and invaluable service rendered as resource speaker during the Doing Ethnography seminar workshop held on July 15, thereby contributing immeasurably to the prestige and success of this event. Given this 15th day of July 2021, signed Regional Director of JED Region 5, Dr. Freddy T. Bernal, CESO 3. It will be signed by our OIC President and will be sent to our respected resource speakers. Same certificate is awarded to Madam Suyen Roldan. Susanna R. Roldan is the same certificate of commendation is awarded to Susanna R. Roldan. So that's it. A virtual clap for our resource speakers for this morning. So in behalf of CNSE, thank you so much, Sir Ellie and Ma'am Suyem, for the discussion of Module 1. Thank you so much po. Ma'am Jo, do we have any...
Salamat din sa pag-imbita no? sa workshop na ito.
Like I said, I'm honored to be here.
Yeah.
That you invited us.
Yeah, actually, we look forward to this. No, excited kami ni Suel kahit kinakabahan kami nung una. Paano ba natin ito gagawin? No? But we really appreciate this and thank you so much for your interest no, in this work. Yeah. Thank you, Joe, for the invitation. Thank you for the officers of Camarines Norte State College.
My personal thanks to Pres Suyen and Ellie for coming to this webinar workshop and for helping in capacitating the faculty researchers of the soon-to-be University of Camarines Norte. But at the same time, it is really, really good to listen to co-anthropologists. Alam nyo kasi, nag-iisa akong anthropologist dito sa CNSC. Wala akong makausap. kung thrilled na thrilled kayo pumunta dito sa amin, even virtually, I'm more thrilled kasi I've been here for 4 years at the CNSC. And wala talaga akong point of conversation among my colleagues. Although, of course, we talk, but it's quite different to really, really refer to the discipline of ethnography and to the qualitative methods as anthropologists see it and practice it on the field. So in that sense, I'm very, very happy. And hopefully, marami na akong makakausap ngayon kasi more than 50 yung nag-enroll dito sa among the CNSC researchers. So we can actually start talking about ethnography and the problems we shall encounter on the field as we go out. Kasi ako magiging supervisor nila sa field work as soon as the IATF allows face-to-face interactions again on the field. Maraming salamat po and I hope that you will come back promptly at 1 o'clock kasi nakita nyo talagang prompt tayo sa pag-start ng strict tayo ngayon sa time. Hindi pwede ngayon yung pahuli-huli. We will be starting at 1 o'clock with Dr. Ramon Felipe Sarmiento doing Philippine ethnographies and his focus will be ethnography at home. Dito ninyo makikita yung binabanggit ni Pres Suyen sa ni Ellie, yung methodology. Ano ba talaga ang pinagagawa ng mga anthropologists on the field when they focus on a certain subject matter. And then to really appreciate the different styles na ang anthropology po ay isang napakabukas na disiplina, no? And nakipaglokohan ako sa isang sociologist, sabi ko, if God has a profession, God must be an anthropologist. Sabi niya, akala ko karpintero siya kasi she's talking about Christ. Sabi ko, hindi. Kasi anthropology is always interested in the human being. And will never ever gives up. We never ever give up on the human being. So if there is a profession that is really, really related to humanity, it will be anthropology. But at the same time also, when people take doctoral degrees or master's degree, they become experts. Di ba? Yan. In quotation mark. Narinig nyo ngayon kay Suyen, kay Ellie. We are never the experts. We are the learners of every ethno-linguistic group that we encounter. We learn from them. We may express, their cultures through our ethnography, what we have seen and what we have heard, but they are the sources of knowledge. They are the sources of information. So, God must be an anthropologist because anthropology is a very humble profession and we never become experts. We continue to learn and we open ourselves to whatever is happening in front of us, keeping an open mind and keeping an open heart. Muli, maraming salamat Suyen, maraming salamat Ellie. This is a great moment for me and it's a great morning for me as the lone anthropologist. Marami na akong kasama ngayon, marami na akong makakausap because I think they finally understand what it means to be an ethnographer.
Yes, ma'am.
Maraming salamat.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. May I request everyone to please turn on your video for documentation, please. Everyone, please. Meron pa pong... Kung naman po kayo patatayuin kasi baka naka-short. Alright, so may request the technical team for the picture. Slide 1. Next po, keep on smiling. Hindi natin alam kung nasang slide tayo. We have 3. 3 po yan. Okay. And another one. Alright, so that ends our morning session. Thank you very much, Ma'am Suyen and Sir Ellie, Ma'am John, and everyone. See you again later at 1 p.m. Thank you and God bless everyone. Stay safe po.